last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many, many tens of kilometers have to be covered on foot by these migrants. And as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome to Drive Time. It's good to be back with you for a second day. One more day of me, but yesterday was fun. Let's make it even more fun on Drive Time. We've got a very fast-paced, fascinating show for you. Let's say we've been helped, because I did think we might not have much news today, but no, our own very own Captain Mannering, i.e. the Prime Minister Starmer, well, he's now announced a climb down on the inheritance tax proposals for farmers. This comes after a traumatic year for farmers, where some of them have been literally contemplating taking their own lives because they've come to either facing illness and so forth to avoid huge taxes that would have destroyed their legacy and destroyed farming for them and their families. Quite a horrific policy in the first place. He's done a climb down. I'm going to dig into that, find out a little bit what it actually means. On the face of it, it does look good news, but it will still leave some farmers, I suspect, facing this hideous tax. And then also I want to dig into the politics. As I was saying to Petrie there, the politics around this are ghastly, and Starmer, he's got his own fractious party. I don't think they're going to be impressed by the U-turn and how they've been out there for a year defending it. But the question I want to ask from you, deeply interested in this one, should we just now abolish inheritance tax completely? I know only about 5% of us are affected. There's going to be more, but it's a hideous tax, isn't it? 03444 499 1000 is the number, or you can leave a voice message. Please do. I love those. I played them all yesterday, I think. Keep them to less than a minute. The more, the merrier. And, of course, meanwhile, in what sounds like good news, non-crime hate crime incidents, rather, are to be, well, sort of scrapped. Probably one of the most useless rules that came out of Parliament and most time-consuming ever. But what exactly has been announced today? And does that mean the police will no longer be knocking on doors, policing social media? Andrew Allison, head of campaigns at Popular Conservatism, will join me. Oh, and by the way, just as patients and doctors and hospitals are getting used to the aftermath of the BMA strike, it emerged today that you, the taxpayer, will be funding, well, you already are funding, in truth, the activities of union public sector workers who actually have a full-time job, and they're meant to be doing that. But guess what? They can carry out union duties, and that money that they are paid for that, you'll never know how much it is, because it's going to be covered up in the employment bill. So much for transparency, we'll hear from the great Taxpayers Alliance. And something quite staggering news, this, that broke within the last couple of hours. The 2 men who planned a gun attack to cause this what's been quoted as untold harm to the Jewish community in Greater Manchester have been found guilty. Now, the crime was foiled by an undercover operative. I mean, how dangerous but heroic was that work? And is it time we gave credit to the authorities on this one? Journalist Nicola Lampert will be joining us. And by the way, I'm looking forward to the sports review because to a man of my generation, and I hope there's a few of you out there, us boomers, it looks like the England cricket team are in trouble for going out and drinking. Not all the facts are as clear as it may seem. But hey, why are they in trouble? I mean, sportsmen are going on tour, and women, I suspect, as well. Not that I've been on a sportswoman's tour. A sportsman's tour, yeah, you know, drink, it happens. And really, are we saying it shouldn't happen in this day and age? Anyway, let's crack on. And I'm very pleased to say that we're going to tackle this subject of inheritance tax and the farmers who now seem to be set to benefit in part from a climb down over this hideous inheritance tax proposal that Starmer and Rachel Reeves dreamt up themselves. They're watering it down. Labour will raise what's called the IHT tax relief threshold for farmers, which comes after a major backlash from a very active farming community because it would have left many farms under threat. Our food supply under threat. And the government said the threshold's going to increase from 2.5 million. That's the point you start paying inheritance tax. And that's gone up from 1 million, which means spouses or civil partners will have, with estates of about to 5 million, will become exempt from no inheritance tax. And that will make a difference. I want to know how much of a difference it will make. And as well as that, I want to talk around the politics of this. So let me go to our first guest, Robert Taylor, political commentator. Robert, welcome.
Hello, Nick.
Robert, I did a little bit of rebelling when I was in Parliament. And when I did, in fact, I did it in about my first 6 months over sending more money to the EU or something. Anyway, I did the rebellion, and Cameron essentially told us all off, threatened us with all sorts of things, and then 6 months later did a climb down on it. That kind of set a trend. In fact, every time an unpopular policy came out that I was fortunate enough not to agree with, I kind of thought, well, I might as well rebel because this lot are just going to change their mind. I mean, politically, this isn't a good look for Starmer with his already fractious party, is it?
Well, some people are calling him Sir U-turn. I call him Sir Flip-flop-a-lot, and it's not a very nice way of putting it about our Prime Minister. But what else can we say when we've had so many U-turns, Nick, since Labour won the election? And remember, this isn't like Cameron was. He had a sort of 40-seat majority, if memory serves. Starmer has nearly 200-seat majority. He should be in a position of strength. He should be able to do what he likes. But we've had U-turns on winter fuel, on disability benefits, on workers' rights, and whether they can be dismissed on day one and get sort of compensation, the inquiry into the grooming gangs, the two-child benefit cap. We've had so many flip-flops and U-turns since this government came into power. It is almost laughable.
So how do you think the backbenchers will react? I mean, there'll obviously be a lot of relief amongst those with farming communities. I'm sure that they can now go to those farming communities and say, oh, look, isn't it wonderful I've been fighting on your behalf? Whether they have or not is another matter. But this has come about. What's brought about this change in Starmer? Was it that grilling he got at the Select Committee?
Well, I think it's partly that and partly superb campaigning on behalf of the farmers. I mean, they played a blinder. I don't normally say this about their, union bosses generally, but their union boss has obviously done a great job behind the scenes with Keir Starmer. And essentially, it is the logic, the weight of their argument, which is that so many family farms are going to be threatened if this policy goes ahead. And by the way, Nick, as you were saying at the start, there will still be some farms that are threatened, but we understand it's now, because of this U-turn, about half the number of farms that would have been threatened. So a great relief for some farmers up and down the country.
Immediately after you, I'm going to be talking to Gavin Lane, who's the president of the Country Land and Business Association, about it, and I'm sure he will dig into a little bit more detail about that. Look, give this some further context, if you like, in what's happened. IHT, inheritance tax, for the last 3 or 4 years has barely raised about 1.56 billion, which I know is a lot of money to you and me and most people, but it's less than 1% of everything that the government gets through. The climb down that he's implemented on this, and even the fact that he brought this policy in, which I think was only going to raise about 350 million. Why invest so much political capital that ends up making you look a complete plonker, right, for such a little bit of money? What were they thinking of, do you think? Can you get into their heads?
I think, Nick, that it is pure incompetence. I really do. I think maybe if you're being generous to them, they might have looked at the figures when they came in and thought, well, look, let's tackle some easy wins. Let's tackle those communities who aren't that sort of fond of the Labour Party anyway. Let's get the bad news out right at the beginning of the Parliament. Then hopefully everyone will have forgotten by the end of the Parliament. That's the way it sometimes happens. But they didn't count on the sheer anger and emotional trauma that they were putting the farming communities through. So this was sheer incompetence on their behalf, Nick. I can't see any other way of putting it to you.
Robert, on that note, thank you very much for setting the political context for this discussion and for joining us this afternoon. I'm very pleased. We've got Gavin Lane, who is the president of the Country Land and Business Association. On Gavin, thanks very much for joining us here on Drive Time this afternoon.
No, thank you.
So is it fair to say this is good news, or is it good news with a caveat?
Yeah, it's very good news. I mean, it's a massive relief for a lot of our members. We represent about 26,000 members. And just to be clear, this is both agricultural property relief and business property relief. So those of our members who have got a lot of money tied up in their businesses will also see that relief as well. It's not just for agriculture. So yeah, it is good news. Yeah, the caveat is that I mean, I saw your film footage there. You can see the tractors in Trafalgar Square. Some of those tractors are £250,000. A combine nowadays, it can be nearly $500,000. So it's very easy to go over the threshold through no fault of your own. And we want to campaign harder to try and get this lifted completely.
There's an interesting contrast, isn't there, between how the union, if you like, that Robert was talking about, have managed discussions with the government. They're getting credit for not, if you like, going hammer and tongs in the media, being big vocal union leaders coming out and slamming them all the time. They seem to be getting credit for quiet negotiation. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, we have worked really, really hard and tirelessly, not just us, but all of the other bodies involved. You know, the arguments have been put before. This has been raised before. It was raised in the Brown era, in the Blair era, and they wouldn't touch it. They would not touch it because it just doesn't generate enough money, and it stops people growing and investing in their businesses, and therefore it's completely counterproductive. If your mandate as a government is growth and investment, you wouldn't want to go anywhere near this. And I just think that it's just taken a long time for them to realise why no other administration has decided to touch this.
Do you think in a year's time, and maybe the Labour government will be banking on this, you know, it was hard to imagine pretty much anyone in the farming community, let alone the farm owners, ever considering supporting this current government. Do you think the change will wipe the memory clean and give them a chance for a fresh start with the government, or is this a deep emotional scar that's been left? We've heard of some pretty horrific stories of some farmers, haven't we, during the past year, contemplating taking their own lives. The Prime Minister was grilled on it in Select Committee.
Yeah, no, I don't know about a reset so much, but this is a very much a change in direction. There's a new, there's a new DEFRA team, a new Secretary of State at DEFRA, a new farming minister at DEFRA. I'm hoping that this is going to be a reset with the rural economy, and it proves that they are serious about trying to get growth and investment in rural areas.
Has it also been helpful in a rather sort of silver lining in what was a very dark cloud, is that people in the public who probably wouldn't give a second thought to farming, and I'm not being rude about that, it's just not necessarily, if you're not involved or you don't live in a farming community, you may not really understand the issues around it. Do you think it's been a reset moment for what our farmers do, the food that they produce, the challenges that they're under, has actually struck home.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, ever since, I mean, even before we started talking about inheritance tax, there was Clarkson's Farm, there were other people out there just showing how incredibly hard it is to make a living out of farming, and that we do, you know, not only produce food, but we look after the landscape. We try and provide for you know, the access, the public access that a lot of people enjoy. We provide the landscapes that people enjoy, and so it's not just about food; it's about all those other things that farmers do. And yeah, I do think that they're starting to get recognition from the general public on that. Although I think that since COVID, I think there has been a recognition that farming is a particularly tough business to be in.
Well, lots of us, I spend a lot of time working in the visitor economy. A lot of farmers have actually diversified, haven't they? In some ways, you know, lots of winter markets or pumpkin festivals are taking place on farms, things like this. Is that actually going to continue and ultimately be a threat to how the land is used and the food that we produce?
I don't think it will be a threat. I think it's probably part of life that you do have to diversify if you want to keep a viable business going. But that was the irony of the inheritance tax, was that you were being penalized for investing in your business. So those people that have put money into diversification and put money into into wedding venues and holiday homes and whatever else it was that they wanted to do, could effectively see their families being penalized when they die, because that would be taxed for inheritance tax.
Listen, thank you very much for joining us. That's Gavin Lane, President of Country Land and Business Association. Interesting fact he slipped in there, by the way. We might let me know if it affects you. It sounds like, from what he's saying, that this climb down is not just for farms, which are businesses, but it seems to be, it may be on business property relief as well, which would be an interesting dimension. So they might be actually pleasing more people than even just farmers. Some very important breaking news that I'm going to read out to you now, if I may. Literally just happened. There's the investigation into chance, which I know many of you will know about, by the rap duo Bob Vylan at Glastonbury Bob Vylan, sorry, at Glastonbury Festival in June, will not lead to any further action by prosecutors, as there is, I can't believe this, insufficient evidence for there to be a realistic prospect of conviction, Avon and Somerset police have said. So let's just be clear. Bob Vylan, the rap duo at Glastonbury, who we all saw on our screens, all right, led a chant and the particular bloke who did it was Pascal Robinson Foster, of death, death to the IDF on the stage, and it was broadcasted live on the BBC. That's breaking news. They're not going to be charged. Somerset and Avon police say there is no, insufficient evidence. It was on the BBC all day. What do you think of that? I'm absolutely appalled at hearing this. I know we're going to try and find someone who might be able to try and explain it, but I think that's going to be very hard. So what do you think of this decision not to prosecute the rap duo Bob Vylan? Pascal Robinson Foster led this chant of death, death to the IDF on stage, broadcast live, and there's insufficient evidence. 0344 499 1000. Send me a voice message if that's easier on the subject. Same number, 0344 499 1000. And I look forward to getting your views on what I frankly find, I'm a little gobsmacked that they've done that. But of course they were facing a deadline. It was coming up for the 28th of this month. And they've only responded because the pressure was growing on them to respond. And yet nothing that has led to a prosecution. Well, you heard it here first on Talk. Join me, carry on the conversation and call me on 0344 499 1000.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Jenny has contacted me on inheritance tax. Thanks for your message. You can obviously contact us on 0344 499 1000, or you can reach us on X at talkTV, or myself at Nick de Bois. Inheritance tax is simply a tax on money that has already been taxed. Get rid of it altogether. Don't let Starmer fool anyone. He hasn't got a clue. The tax must be removed from farms altogether. It is the only way farming will survive, and without farmers, we are all without food, says Jenny in the Isle of Wight. I say hear to that. Now, I've just broken the news to you about the rap duo, Bob Vylan at Glastonbury Festival in June. Basically, they led this chant from the stage, death, death to the IDF, and it was broadcast live on the BBC. Somerset and Avon Police say insufficient evidence to prosecute. Now, Andrew Allison, of course, head of campaigns at Popular Conservatism, has joined me to, funny enough, talk about something else. But welcome, Andrew. I've got to ask you your reaction to this decision not to prosecute Bob Vylan.
I'd like to say that I was surprised, Nick, but I'm not really. I think Avon and Somerset Police always had the intention of counting down the clock to zero. And if no one had kicked up a fuss, they wouldn't have said anything at all. But to make matters worse, the idea that there is insufficient evidence when it was broadcast live on television is, well, it's what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, it's nonsense. It's rubbish. It's balderdash. You know, they've got to come up with a better reason than that, because the evidence was there right in front of them.
Well, I think most of us will draw that conclusion. If you don't, I'd be fascinated to hear what the case is from other people. I suppose what's getting me a little bit here is this kind of sits uncomfortably alongside when you're reading that Manchester Police and Met Police are saying they're going to take more robust action against people carrying placards supporting illegal groups and so forth. So hang on, I know about two-tier policing. Have we literally got different policing in each county now?
It seems like that, but I mean, you mentioned Greater Manchester Police, and the Chief Constable there is Stephen Watson. At the Conservative Party conference about 3 or 4 years ago, when it was in Manchester, I actually got him to be part of a panel and speak in a debate on policing, and I was on the panel with him. It ended up turning into Chief Constable's question time by the end, but he was absolutely brilliant. He seems to be a no-nonsense, non-woke cop. So, yeah, it is tier policing. I think it depends on who the Chief Constable is and what sort of a lead he or she gives.
It kind of makes me almost agree with Shabana Mahmood that we should now rationalise the police forces and have them brought under bring all these counties together and maybe have them under one chief. But I suppose it then depends who's the chief. Listen,
it does, and of course I don't think it worked particularly well in Scotland.
No,
that is what true. People are telling me.
Which is Police Scotland. Yeah, I do understand it. But just sticking with this for a minute, if I may, this does send contradictory signals, and isn't it just going to encourage those to think that, frankly, being anti-Semitic, supporting violence against the Israeli people, that surely it's just going to encourage people to think they can get away with it. Just when we were beginning to think that this might be a turning point, given what the police in Manchester and London have said.
Well, yes, that's the only indication that you could get out of this, really. That it's absolutely fine to say hateful things about the IDF, which of course means all Jewish people who live in Israel, because every Israeli Jew, male or female, when they come to the age of 18, I believe it is, must do compulsory national service in the military. Therefore, you saying death to the IDF, and that simply means everyone, every male or female Jew in Israel.
It's interesting. I've got a message in which is linked to this, so I'm going to read it out. Just be interesting to have your thoughts on it. And said it's Jack from Weymouth, who I think is about to put up a defence for this. He said, "Good afternoon, Nick. It's brilliant news that Bob Villan didn't get charged. Total waste of everyone's time and money. I believe in free speech. I will stand in front of anyone to protect their view. I might hate it and will make my skin crawl. I will defend the right for people to say what they want. It shows who they are. Then people can make a choice themselves, not whatever rubbish that is fashionable. So please, free speech has won. We all know where he stands for and believes, what he stands for and believes. It's great to have you back on air. Thank you for that." So our producer wants to play the clip, so let's just do that.
Death, death to the IDF! 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 Hell yeah, from the river to the sea, Palestine must be, will be, inshallah, it will be free.
Okay, it's pretty clear to me there that he's inciting violence, but let everyone else make their mind up. I've had very mixed feelings about showing that, but that's basically what he's doing, isn't it? And that's the difference between free speech and inciting violence.
Yeah, exactly. No, you've hit the nail on the head, and I can't really add much more to what you said there. I mean, we're facing, or Jews are facing, throughout the world now. I mean, we've seen what happened in Sydney just over a week ago. We've seen what's happening in the United States. We see what's happening here in the UK. Jews are facing an almost unprecedented hatred, certainly since the Second World War. And by doing that, by inciting that hatred, inciting that violence, he's making things even more worse and encouraging more people to behave like that. So yeah, it's an obvious incitement to violence, and it's an obvious incitement to extreme hatred. And he should have at least been questioned. At least his crimes should have been investigated. To say there's insufficient evidence just does not cut the mustard, I'm afraid.
Particularly with what he says at the end. But people, I'm sure our viewers and listeners will make their own minds up. Listen, I did bring you on to talk about this report that non-crime hate incidents would be scrapped, or do you know what? I think it could be scrapped. I'm still not convinced it's going to happen. So basically, non-crime hate incidents set to be scrapped under plans that police chiefs will present to the Home Secretary next month. Apart from me being constantly baffled about if it's a non-crime incident, what are the police getting involved with in the first place? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, if true, then of course it's welcome news. But again, if true, it's welcome news. I mean, we've seen some really high-profile cases of late, haven't we? With Alison Pearson, Telegraph columnist, that was on Remembrance Sunday last year. We saw armed police, I think about 5 police officers, arrest Graham Linehan,
a comedian,
airport.
Yes.
I mean, you can't even get a police officer around at your door after you've been burgled. But apparently, you say something horrible on Twitter, so they say. And it warrants 5 police officers arresting someone at Heathrow Airport. So we've seen this, but more and more people have become aware of them. And I was brought up, Nick, and you were probably brought up to say, well, if you've done nothing wrong, you've got nothing to fear. The thing is, these days, if you've done nothing wrong, you still have something to fear. And these have been exposed, and they've been exposed right throughout the world. So it will not surprise me if they do go, because it just doesn't look very good when it comes to free speech in Britain. And this has been noted in particular, of course, by J.D. Vance and the Trump administration. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? The recommendation has come from, basically, I think he's the chair of the police college, which, of course, is a former Conservative police minister, Nick
Lord
Herbert.
Herbert.
Lord Herbert. I understand the thinking going round is that common sense should replace reporting these incidents. Well, I know that your group, Popular Conservatism, values common sense. We're the home of common sense. But What does that mean? What do you think? What are they saying?
Well, it did make me wonder. And when I read that report in the Telegraph, I thought, well, why do police officers need to be told to use common sense? Isn't using common sense just part of everyday policing? But then I thought perhaps there are some police officers, Nick, who are watching this show at the moment or listening to it in their cars, who are screaming at it, saying, well, we do have common sense and we do try to use common sense. So perhaps it's more aimed at the top brass.
Exactly.
Constabularies than it is at rank and file officers.
I would love a police officer to come anonymously on air and tell me what they really think about this. So they can call 0344 499 1000. Listen, thanks for being such a great sport there, coming on to talk about one thing and finding yourself responding to the Bob Villan decision not to prosecute them. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. Just before we go to the break, let's listen to what Martin has said in a message.
On Facebook, the police would be knocking my door, something derogatory about somebody on Facebook. I would have the police knocking my door for a non-crime, hate crime or whatever they call them. Yet this guy is on national TV in front of thousands of people saying death, death, death to the IDF, and there's insufficient evidence. Have they not got enough witnesses? Nonsense, absolute nonsense. Two-tier Britain, that's all I can say.
I think it could be even more multi-tiered. Depends who's in charge of the local county police force. We'll probably be talking about this later on in the show. Martin, thanks for your note. You can join the conversation. 0344 499 1000. Talk about whatever you wish. This is drive time, okay? But if you specifically want to talk about that, I'm going to be very interested in your views, whether you think it's the right decision not to prosecute or the wrong decision. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
I shall be taking your calls before this hour is out. You can join the conversation on 0344 499 1000. I've got lots of messages in. I'm only going to, but because I've got a guest waiting, I'm just going to read one here about the Bob Villan. The message is from Richard Hastings, and he said, has anyone told Peter Cardwell, which he may have had a bit of a wry smile on his face when he sent that, but Peter has really championed the idea that Bob Villan should be prosecuted, and I'm sure he'll be disappointed and angry, and I'm sure he does know. Robert, thank you for your concern. I just want to shift the subject for a minute because there's a lot going on, believe it or not, and it is the 23rd of December. Taxpayers are to be kept in the dark over the cost of public sector union duties. Now, just to explain, we're not going to be able to find out how much money is spent so that union officials, this is taxpayer money because it's in the public sector, union officials can have paid time off work under the government's worker rights reform. Because what these people do is they go to tribunals to represent people, they get involved in all union business. And it's hard to believe that won't involve necessarily getting involved in organising strikes as well. But whilst we've spent, to give you context, in the last reported figures, they've gone up to 107 million and they call it facility time. I mean, who dreams up a bland name for spending taxpayers' money like that in the hope it'll be hidden? But basically, Labour are scrapping the powers to cap how much they can spend, and it's going up, and remove the requirement for these public bodies, anyone, NHS, anyone, to declare in the future how much they're going to spend. Wow, that's a win for transparency, isn't it? So let's find out a little bit more from a great man, William Yarwood. He's spokesman at the Taxpayers Allowance, my favourite organisation. You depress me regularly with your mail-outs, but they're worth reading. Welcome, William. Transparency, out. Expenses and cost, up. So can you clarify, what are these people meant to be doing and why is it costing us money?
Sure. Well, first of all, good afternoon, Nick. Great to be on the show. And I'm very sad we depress you on a regular basis, but that's sort of our job here at the TPA. It's sort of what we do for a living. So apologies, but also no apologies from us for revealing the truth.
Quite right.
Look, when it comes to trade union facility time, yeah, like you said, there was a lot of transparency around this due to the fact that the last Conservative government between 2010 and 2016, so that's the Cameron-led Conservative and coalition governments, introduced something called the Trade Union Act, basically, which made that all public sector bodies had to reveal basically how many people in these public sector bodies, and that's not just the civil service, Nick, that's TfL, that's the police service, that's NHS trusts, you name it. They had to reveal how many people were doing facility time in those organisations and how much it was costing. And yet some of them will be organising, some of them will be, holding meetings, doing strikes. It's a little bit nebulous what these guys are up to, but at least before we actually knew what they were doing, thanks to the piece of legislation passed in 2016. But just on another level, Nick, this is coming in due to the Employment Rights Bill, which of course was Rayner's, she was sort of the mother of this bill.
The former Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner.
Former Deputy Prime Minister, yes, the woman who is not a fan of stamp duty either, but neither am I, so we have something in common there. But nevertheless, this is because of the Employment Rights Bill, and it should be of surprise to absolutely no one that this is in there. Rayner, before she became Deputy Prime Minister, when she was still in the opposition, she constantly voiced, how much she was in favour of trade union facility time and how the Conservative government had attacked it again and again, and how basically the removal of the Trade Union Act 2016 would be a core part of Labour's policy platform. So, yeah, I'm not surprised this should happen and no one should be, but there's a principle here at stake, Nick, which is not a single penny of taxpayers' cash. I don't care it's £1 or it's £1 million or £100 million or however much it is, should be spent on trade union facility time, and that's that.
We've just had a situation where the Labour Party created a nightmare for farmers, some of them contemplating suicide even, and they were going to raise 350 million, I think, by the taxes they were going to introduce on the farmers. This is going to cost, at the moment, 107 million. It's going to go up. The minute you hide the figures, guess what? And by the way, as I understand it, this money is allocated on the self-declaration of the union official who says how much time they've spent on it and they consider reasonable. Well, blow me down. This is going to go up. And they are spending something like, it won't be long before they're spending 150, 200 million on this. And it's very hard to grasp how, when they've created so much agony and pain over 350 million possible from inheritance tax, that they're chucking money at something like this. What is the mentality in a Labour government that seems to treat public money with such contempt? Or is that true, William, of all political parties?
I think it's true of all political parties, but I think there is something innate within the sort of socialist Labour mindset in the sense that they don't believe it's taxpayers' money. They ultimately think it's government money and they can do what they like with it as soon as they get it. And a lot of them also don't massively care about transparency. Like, this is a core example of them not caring about transparency. The fact that they won't reveal, crime statistics regarding foreign nationals in the country is another example of a lack of transparency from this Labour government. But what we do know, if you talk about how this price is going to increase time and time again. We actually did a little bit of research earlier this year on trade union facility time, looking at the 2023-24 data, and we found, Nick, that there's actually over 21,000 trade union representatives costing around 9.8 million quid inside of the public sector. And actually almost 1,000 of them spent almost 100% of their time on facility time. So that's 100. So almost 1,000.
Hang on, William. Hang on. Aren't they originally employed to do a job to serve the public?
Yeah, precisely. That's the key problem here. So there's been a mission creep here, whereby they basically have been hired to do, a certain job, and then they end up essentially doing 100% of their working hours on facility time. And there are about 500 odd who were doing between 51 to even up towards 90% of their working hours on facility time. I think it's a gross injustice, actually, for taxpayers who have to suffer with unions going on strike and, just destroying public services. I mean, obviously we've got the issue with the junior doctors at the moment. Resident doctors, don't want to get cancelled for that one. But nevertheless, I think that taxpayers deserve a lot better than this. But I'm not surprised that Labour is doing this because, like I said earlier, they don't think taxpayers' cash ultimately belongs to taxpayers, and also they care more about appeasing their trade union mates than they do about farmers or small businesses or ordinary hard-working families.
Well, perhaps people should remember, next time you hear an MP say, we haven't got money for this, just offer that they look at how they can cut this extraordinary amount of money that we're not going to know in the future that is funding trade union activity instead of delivering services. William, we ran out of time, I'm afraid. William Yarwood, spokesman for Taxpayers Allowance, thanks very much indeed for joining me. Funny enough, I was hoping to get him to talk about quangos. I'll save that. Maybe I'll slip that in tomorrow. That's a good Christmas Eve story, isn't it? Quangos. That's got your heart racing, hasn't it? We're coming up after this. Your calls, your messages, 0344 499 1000.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Goodness, lots of messages coming through on Bob Villan. Whichever fool made this decision should be sacked immediately and lose their pension, said Fred Nuthers. The moron Bob Villan clearly and unequivocally incited violence and death against Israeli IDF soldiers. He incited the crowd to chant death to the IDF and from the river to the sea, as you would have seen when we showed the clip. I'm going to go through these. I think it deserves it. I've read one out in defence of the decision not to prosecute, and I will read more if they come in, but the overwhelmingly people are quite furious about this. And you can join the conversation, 0344 499 1000, or leave me a voice message if that's easier. On Pascal Robinson Foster, I have made a formal complaint to Avon and Somerset Police and would suggest any listeners as outraged as I am at their announcement to spend 5 minutes doing the same, says Adrian Baird in Buckhurst Hill. Yes, I'm fully behind that. Talk, what a bloody joke. Oh, I'm very old-fashioned. Can you say that on air? Shocking, eh? No evidence. Mind you, it does involve the magnificent BBC. Glad I don't live in this biased country, says Gilly in Italy. Mike Neville said on the breakfast show this AM, policing colleagues have been captured by the left. Bob Villan verdict is just concrete proof, says Clayton in Dartford. Let's take a voice message from... I'm not sure who it's from. Let's find out. It's Ray. Here we go.
I'm a retired officer from the Avon and Somerset Constabulary, and I was discussing this recently at a colleague's funeral. Now that they've done this, I personally, and I believe a lot of my colleagues and ex-colleagues, will be totally disgusted with this. And if this isn't two-tier justice, I cannot see how it does not meet the threshold for a prosecution. We all saw it on television, evidently, and I don't think he's ever denied saying it. And in fact, I believe he went on elsewhere to go down deeper about it. And I don't know, I'm just gobsmacked.
Well, I think you expressed the view of most people who have been messaging me so far. Good afternoon, Nick. What an absolute shambolic statement formulated by the Avon and Somerset Police. That band, in which have a following and a platform, set about even more so by the BBC at Glastonbury, caught on camera for all to see with their disgusting comments. Not a case to answer here. Shame on this response. Just one more. talkTV, what a joke. Millions around the world, thanks to the BBC, would have heard the chant, death, death to the IDF. Shame on Labour's police force, says Max in Warwickshire. Let's go to Nigel in London. You want to join the conversation? 0344 499 1000. Nigel, hello.
Hi, good afternoon. Long time no speak. I trust that you're well.
That's my fault. I've been away. I've been dragged out of retirement, Nigel, but I do remember our conversations. It's good to have you back.
Good.
What can I help you with? What would you like to say?
I wanted to talk about this decision. I think that from my point of view, it looks as if the Avon and Somerset Police or the Crown Prosecution Service seem to condone anti-Semitism. Now, as I was saying to the gentleman who took my telephone call, if people were on stage from a right-wing group or any other group and shouted out death to Muslims or harm to people of another nation, it would be equally as abhorrent and disgusting and nasty, and those people should be prosecuted. This, unfortunately, sets a precedent now where people can think that they can get away with it. Let's not forget, it's only about a week or so ago that the Greater Manchester Police Chief Constable, along with Sir Mark Rowley, shifted the goalposts and wrote a joint letter suggesting there should be more arrests and indeed prosecutions for people.
So Nigel, the risk is we've now sent confusing mixed messages, and the lunatics will be back on the street supporting terrorist groups and shouting anti-Semitic chants. That's the risk now, isn't it?
Absolutely. Look, and I'll tell you, look, I'm a white guy. I'm a Jewish guy. I live in a Christian country. I respect and endorse Christian values. I'm married to a lady of colour, a black lady who's a Christian. His father's a minister. And we share lots of happy time together, and I support Christianity. But I think that if anyone says anything about any other faith, doesn't matter if it's Christian or Muslim, it's just as disgusting, just as unpalatable, just as abhorrent and nasty and grim. And the police, I'm sorry, have no appetite to pursue and prosecute. And it sends out, as you've said, a mixed message, and it allows people to do what they want, because they can say, well, hang on a second, if Avon and Somerset Police said it's not an offence to be prosecuted, then why can't I say it in Manchester or Glasgow or London?
You see, I need a police officer to ring in, or maybe even a lawyer, because you mentioned something that crossed my mind immediately, and I haven't seen the full statement. I've literally read out the edited version of the highlight, if you like, about why they have insufficient evidence. But I thought prosecution decisions at this level would come from the CPS. So were the CPS involved? And if not, then I assume they believe there was less than a 50% chance of a prosecution success, which baffles me. But I'm going to dig into that, because obviously this is breaking news, just to find out. Because the police, yes, okay, you know, they've got a key role to play here. But I thought the CPS would have to be involved in a decision of this level to prosecute. I could be wrong. I'm happy to be corrected.
Well, the thing that's interesting for me is that police make a decision whether to arrest if there's evidence. And if there's evidence, as it clearly was, which was broadcast, then one could argue that, given the current climate, the CPS and or the Avon and Somerset Police should think that a prosecution is in fact in the public interest.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Well, it's definitely in the public interest. I cannot see how it is not in the public interest. Listen, Nigel, thank you for articulating your views and your thoughts as ever so well. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can do so on 0344 499 1000. I've got some more voice messages, so do send me a voice message if that's easier. 0344 499 1000 on the subject of Bob Villan, obviously, and the decision not to prosecute him. But also, I'm asking, and many of you are contributing on this, about inheritance tax. A theme's developing that it's double taxation. And I once heard a broadcaster from a, shall we say, a more left-minded station argue that the inheritance tax was not double taxation. Well, it most certainly is, and I'm happy to debate that with anyone. But it's a hideous tax, isn't it? It should go. It raises less than 1% of the money the government spent. The government have learnt, to their cost, political cost certainly, and financial cost, that they made an awful judgment when it came to the farmers. But at the end of the day, all of us, more of us, are creeping into that band where we will pay more inheritance tax rather than give it to our loved ones and our kids, who, by the way, will go on to spend it and help the economy. But no, Labour want to take it from you on your estate when you're dead, after anything over, I think it's 350,000, 375,000 threshold. And when you think of the price of houses, particularly down here in the south, add in the housing allowance, which takes your threshold, if you have a house, up to nearly 700,000, you basically are going to be paying tax rather than giving it to your kids. You know what? There's people who've got quite a lot of money, boomers, if you like, of my generation, who are busy spending their money rather than giving it to Rachel Reeves, giving it to their kids now, so that in the hope that they live long enough so their kids won't have to pay tax. That is the perversity of what Labour have done. They are one of the most hideous-minded tools to use to raise tax from a government that has already shown today how utter lack of understanding they have in both how taxation works, how inheritance tax works, and how it is going to stifle not only the growth that they want, but actually change behaviour and in some cases ruin lives. 0344 499 1000. Should we get rid of inheritance tax? And of course, call me on Bob Villan. This decision not to charge him is absolutely ludicrous, as many of you are making clear. Let me continue with some of your messages that have come in. Okay, Rory from Hearts here. I don't know on Bob Villan. On one hand, he should be allowed to say whatever as long as it isn't inviting racism or violence. And that's the point. I think we've shown the clip. I don't particularly want to show it again if I can avoid it, but it's pretty clear to most of us that that is exactly what he is doing. He is asking, he's basically saying, death to the IDF, and he finishes off with the chant about from the river to the sea, which we all know is code for basically the obliteration of Jewish people from in Israel. The IDF is an army, not a race, and good luck trying to enact violence against the IDF. What gets me is if I stood up on stage and shouted death to Hamas, would I be banged up? Damn right I would. Therein lies the rub. Nice dilemma, Rory. Thank you for sharing that with us. Dan from Kent on inheritance tax. Afternoon, Nick. Am I right in saying that the threshold is going to 2.5 million from 1 million for inheritance tax? Yes, you are. But that the revenue will still be the same for the government purse. In other words, our farms over 2.5 million going to be paying a lot more tax to cover the shortfall? I don't believe so. I think they'll be paying it at 20%, and there will be less farms paying it. Sean Cooper, I'm going to get through these. In fact, let me draw a breath. Let's hear from Judith on a voice note.
So no great surprise to the Jewish community that there's going to be no prosecution of Bob Villan. As soon as I saw the clip from Glastonbury, I knew nothing would happen. Firstly, absolutely reprehensible chant. Basically, it's whipping up hatred, even more hatred if it was needed, against my community. We are the smallest minority in the UK, indeed the world. There's only 200,000 of us now living in the UK, threatened every single day. He was inciting hatred. He was inciting violence against all of us. From the river to the sea, that lovely chant. We all know what that means. It means wipe out the state of Israel, kill all 7 million of us there, plus the 2 million non-Jews that live with us peacefully in Israel, I might add. It's just, I can't bear it. It's just disgusting and heartbreaking. Anyway, I think I'll have a bit of a break from social media for the festivities and the Christmas period.
Well, Judith, happy Christmas to you. And I'm ashamed that so many Jewish people feel unsafe in our country, and I'm truly ashamed by that. And thank you for your message. 0344 499 1000 if you want to continue the conversation. Let's go quickly to Roy in London. Roy, I've got less than 2 minutes, so far away.
Yeah, good afternoon, Nick. And first of all, Merry Christmas to you and your listeners.
Thank you.
This is how I see this. This is now, has already been mentioned, this will now encourage the lunatics, to go even further. Yeah. This is the same with Ricky Jones, and it seems to me, depending on your political persuasion, whether there's leniency is exercised more. But I'd like to say, add on to this, and I think this is relevant. I'm a veteran, and I was proud at the time to serve our once great country. And the current Chief of the Defence Staff is saying, we should be prepared now to go to war and serve. There's no way on earth I would now risk my life to serve this country again. I do not believe in Britain anymore, and it does upset me to say that, because this was a once great country with great people. I would not serve it anymore. The Britain I knew and loved, although not perfect, that's gone. And now we have a government now that seems to hate these people, wants to punish us, wants to be authoritarian, and I think most of the political parties are like this. How this decision was made will be very interesting to hear in full. The head of the CPS, the head of the Avon and Somerset Police, in my view, should be summoned to Parliament and made to answer and explain their decisions.
Roy, you can hear the music coming in the background. I wanted you to have a long essay as possible. In the break, I'm going to try and read the full statement as well, see if there's anything in there I should also be sharing with you. So join the conversation at the top of the hour. You can do that by 0344 499 1000. Nicola Lampert, journalist, will speak to us on Bob Villan coming up right after the top of the hour with me, Nick de Bois, here, of course, on Drive. It could only be Drive.
Libya has become a major transit route for refugees and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, and many of them come through Libya dreaming of getting to the UK, particularly from Sudan, where there has been a civil war waging for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the channel crossing as the dangerous bit. But actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many, many tens of kilometers have to be covered on foot by these migrants. And as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very limited resources. Once again, you know, people come in from charities, from NGOs, they use warm words, and the authorities here told me the only thing that we ever get is maybe a few toothbrushes and some nappies for the babies.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And welcome back to the second hour. Let me just recap before I go to my guest, Nicole Lampert. The investigation by Avon and Somerset Police into the chants by the rap duo Bob Vylan, and you remember that was at the Glastonbury Festival in June, will not lead to any further action by prosecutors, as there's insufficient evidence for there to be a realistic prospect of conviction, the police have said. And you will recall that Pascal Robinson Foster led a chant of death, death to the IDF on the stage, and it was broadcast live on the BBC. I've tried in the break to skim read the full statement. I just thought I'd read this little bit out to you. We sought, this is from the Avon and Somerset Police, specific consideration around the words stated, which, you know, there weren't that many words to get your head round, in terms of the intent behind them. Okay, the wider context of how people heard what was said, case law, and anything else potentially relevant, including freedom of speech. Every case must be treated on its own merits, and consequently the advice we have received has highlighted fundamental evidential difficulties that cannot be ignored. I wish their statement went on to tell us what those were, because I think a lot of people are going to be distressed, disappointed, frustrated, a little angry. But let's talk to Nicole Lampert. It's a good friend to this programme, and I know we'll be all across this. Nicole, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
So what's your initial reaction?
All of the things that you kind of just mentioned, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm disappointed, but also in some ways not shocked, because it seems that when it comes to freedom of speech, people are free to say whatever they want to when it comes to Israel and Jews. So we've had, you know, recent conversations about globalize the Intifada. We've seen what globalize the Intifada means, and yet, although the government has said that they see it as hate speech, most of the police areas in this country still won't see it as hate speech. And one of the problems now is just that the CPS doesn't seem to recognise anti-Zionism as a form of racism, and so I think that's leading to where we are. And of course, free speech is really important in this country, but we live in a time of extremism. We've literally just seen what anti-Zionism leads to in Bondi. We've also seen it in Manchester, and we've seen today as well a court case in which we now see just how far people are willing to go to kill Jews. So the fact that people are allowed to scream at it from the stage of Glastonbury, leading thousands to chant with it, is just it feels like we're not being protected as a community. It feels like we are allowing extremism to run free in this country.
It does feel like this country is letting Jewish people down badly, big time. It does feel like that to me. I can't imagine what it feels like to people of the Jewish faith. But you've touched on quite a few things there. I just want to pick one off. I actually had a tiny sense of hope, even though I was staggered how long it had taken, when the leaders of the Metropolitan Police and the Manchester Police came out and said, you know, we're not standing for this anymore, global intifada, we all know what that means, we're going to start arresting people, holding them to account for it. I actually had some hope that we were beginning to see a sea change. I can't think of a more public way to both undermine that hope, but also send extraordinary conflicting messages about how this country responds to these horrific chants. You must feel the same.
Well, absolutely, and it just feels to me it's giving green light to anybody who want to now scream from the rooftops, and they shall, death, death, the IDF. And what Nick Timothy, the Conservative MP who's been doing lots of work on Islamism, said that when he went to Birmingham, when he was looking at the Aston Villa and what was happening there, people there didn't just, they know the IDF is a conscript army. When they're talking about the IDF, they're talking about all Israelis, because all Israelis have to go in the IDF. Well, certainly all the Jewish Israelis, and many others do, many Arabs do, and Druze do. So, but really what they're talking about is Israelis, and then from there it becomes Zionists, and then it becomes Jews. And certainly the killers on Bondi Beach, they didn't see much difference. They killed them because they were Zionists, and in Manchester as well, with the court case that where they were found guilty today. Again, they're talking. They're anti-Zionists, but they want to kill Jews. They want to kill as many Jews as they can, and they're happy that if that means killing Christians too. They just want to get the Jews first. That's what they actually said. So this is a problem for Britain's tiny Jewish community. It's extremely worrying. We don't feel like we are being protected at all. But this is also a problem for the wider country. How far are we willing to let extremists shout their hatred? Like, when do we get a grip of this? Because it feels like we are nowhere near getting a grip.
I've got so many lines of inquiry. Let me just pick up on what you've just said then. What do you think could turn the corner on this? What do you think should happen to give you that sense that we're getting a grip on this situation?
I think we need a stronger line from our government, and they need to decide what is hate speech and what isn't. And of course, that's a conversation that we've been having in our country on many different issues. For example, the trans issue, the Facebook posts around the summer rights for 24. There's lots of discussion, and we have to decide, and the CPS has to know what goes over the line of hate speech when it comes to Jews and when it comes to Zionists, who are really interchangeable, even if not all Jews are Zionists and not all Zionists are Jews. But essentially, when they're talking about wanting to kill Zionists, that's what they mean. So that to me is a key point. The government needs to do it with the CPS, and they need to make this decision, and they need to stick by it. And they have to say, you know, we acknowledge this is dangerous, and something needs to be done. But you know, even after Bondi in Australia, and they seem to have a very similar government, and they're not getting to grips with it. There they are trying to concentrate on gun laws, and they're not looking at extremism, and that's the other issue. We really need to think about extremism and how it's being pushed by this war. The war has been like a catalyst for people wanting to misbehave. You know, we've just seen with the people that have gone on hunger strike in the prisons, all of that kind of stuff. It's kind of Palestine. The Palestine issue is the trigger, but it's not really the only thing. It's a war against Jews, but it's also a war against the West.
Could you forgive me if I'm really clumsy here, and there's certain things I think I know a lot about and there's things that I don't, and it's part of the mindset. So if I'm clumsy, I apologise in advance, but do you think that the concept of anti-Semitism is just taken far less, it's seen as less important, that's the wrong word, but just less significant than racism, as we all kind of identify and more easily and understand that? And does that breed, if you like, it's not as serious, despite what we're seeing around the world? Is there any sense in that?
Yeah, massively. And I think it's because often it's more subtle. It's not shouting something, often it's not shouting, you N-word or you P-word or whatever. It's that it's you Zionist or you Zio. And these if they're used in hateful ways, then they are just as racist. And I suppose that's just the kind of lowest level. But then what we are, we're genuinely seeing incitement. We've seen murders happen in Manchester as well as Australia, and you would have thought really after Bondi that it would have led to a sea change across the West in terms of how they accept this kind of hate speech. But even in Australia, there's a big demand there for a royal commission, which the government is like doesn't want to have. It's a royal commission into anti-Semitism, which the government there is refusing to have. And here, the most we've got after Manchester, after Bondi is maybe let's try and outlaw a few words, and even most of the police forces won't allow that to happen. So it very much feels like it's not taken seriously, that they are not protecting us as a tiny community as it is. Our schools, our synagogues, they are like fortresses. And
I used to visit them years ago when I was briefly an MP. I used to go to the ones in Enfield Southgate and visit, and there were guards there then. I can't begin to imagine what it's like going to worship and having to have a ring of steel around you and around the schools. Look, before we go on to talk a little bit about today in Manchester, which I would like to do if I may briefly do so, I suppose I want to revisit. We had a voice message. I think it was from Judy. I can't remember. It might have been Judith. And basically, at the end of it, she's Jewish. She was just saying, "I don't recognise this country anymore, and I don't feel safe in this country anymore." Can you give me a sense of how widespread that is? It across all generations? Are there people who still have hope and refuse to leave what they presumably consider their home? Or are you seeing a real uptick in people now, we're off?
There's a lot of discussion about where to go. I'm on many WhatsApp groups, and sometimes it starts as a kind of jokey discussion, but it's becoming ever more serious. And that's the big question. Where do you go that's safe? America used to be seen as a really safe place, but there they have problems with the left and with the right. Canada was seen as a safe place, but if there's going to be another Bondi, it will either be here or Canada, I would imagine. Australia, obviously, we've just seen how dangerous that is. And Israel, of course, is meant to be the safe place for Jews. And I even had an argument on Facebook with someone who has moved to Israel, but it's not like it's safe there. But you do have an army which is at least on your side. But of course, there are people hurling rockets from all of the borders. There are terrorists that are trying to kill you. But at least there, you feel like the government, even if you hate them, are on your side and are not anti-Semitic, that they at least that they understand Islamic terrorism. Like, we are in a country that we've had many Islamic terrorist attacks, and we will be talking about the one that was foiled that was in court today, but. So we should be more aware of this. And there are many moderate Muslims that I speak to, they're frightened too. So Jews are frightened, but anyone that has their eyes opened is frightened. Just what is allowed to continue.
Well,
and this kind of extremism.
Well, let's briefly talk about Manchester, and just to give it context to everyone who's watching and listening. 2 men who planned a gun attack to cause what's been described as untold harm to the Jewish community, specifically in Manchester, have been found guilty. Walid Sadoui, 38, and Ammar Hussein, 52, and it's quoted here, had a visceral dislike of Jewish people and arranged for guns to be brought into the UK as part of an ISIS-inspired plot. I mean, there's so many things that come around here, but it was frankly, thanks to very brave undercover police work, that these people didn't get anywhere, which I'm sure we're all extremely grateful for. But here we have it in absolutely spelt out plainly. There are people now prepared to kill on the streets of this country as many Jewish people as possible. I mean, that must be mildly terrifying for Jewish people.
It really is. I wish there was a day in the news that there hasn't, it felt like it's been a really long 2 and a bit years where there's stories of either people wanting to kill Jews, talking about how much they hate Jews, or they are killing Jews, or they're trying to. And that one feels very close to home. One of the schools he was looking at is the school that my niece and nephew went to. One of the events they were talking about targeting was an event with Rachel Riley that I'd put the organiser in touch with Rachel to do. They wanted to go to a march against anti-Semitism, try and kill people there, and then go to North Manchester where my in-laws live. So it feels very close to home. And of course, even as this trial was going on, somebody did attack that very same community, Heaton Park, and killed one person. Obviously a police officer killed another by mistake, and he also stabbed people, and that would have been much worse if there hadn't already been some security at the synagogue, doors and gates and all of that. So no, we need someone to get a grip, don't we? We need someone.
We have leaders in this country who are there to do that, to protect the citizens of this country and defend this country. And it's quite clear the Jewish community feel that they have been let down badly. I feel let down badly, and I'm not of the Jewish faith. I'm extraordinarily grateful to you, Nicole, for coming on and talking about both the Bob Villan situation and what's happened in Manchester today, which is weirdly a bit of a good news story that it was thwarted. But your views, 0344 499 1000. Let me just read a couple of more messages that are coming in, and I'd like to hear from you. Is there anything Nicole said that you identify with or perhaps wish to challenge? People are frightened to live in this country because they fear they may be killed, right? Because of their faith, because they're Jewish. It's extraordinary, really. 0344 499 1000. Hi, Mark from Bristol here. What Avon and Somerset Police are doing doesn't surprise me in the least. Bristol is second to Brighton in the UK for one of the wildest far-left attitudes in the UK. Once one of our greatest cities, even a county at one stage, Bristol has been destroyed by the woke and far-left communists in our council and the police force. That is a total joke. Good afternoon, Nick. Very disappointed with Avon and Somerset Police, but why do we never seem to find out who is actually accountable for these ludicrous decisions? Good point. I reckon it will come out, and I want these people to lose their pension and be in prison as well. I'm not sure they'll go to prison for that, or even lose their pension. Absolutely no doubt this is a two-tier justice. On the same day, a court convicted 2 men of planning an attack on Jews, says Greg Sinclair. A man who has incited attacks on Jews gets let off. Shameful, says Greg Sinclair. I'm going to have to catch up on that one. I can see the phone lines are ringing. You can join the conversation, 0344 499 1000 on this, on should we abolish inheritance tax, which I know may seem not to be bubbling away, but I'm getting loads of messages on that, and I'd love to know your views. Come on, let's get rid of it. I mean, honestly, the government seems to be all over the place with the money. We might as well, and we'll grow the economy a little bit because all that money will be spent. 0344 499 1000.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
So good news for farmers today. Well, some farmers anyway. They are not going to be subject to the original horrific plans of the government to effectively wipe them out of business. Some farmers were clearly in a terrible situation and were even contemplating suicide. Those who were approaching death wanted to literally die before the new inheritance tax rules came in. I know we've got it. Have we got that clip of Keir Starmer when he was challenged? Let's, just before we go to my next guest, who is actually a farmer. This was Keir Starmer briefly challenged about whether he was aware of the impact of his inheritance tax changes before today's announcement.
Is the Prime Minister aware that some farmers who have terminal diagnosis now are actively planning to expedite their own deaths so they hit before April? Is he aware of that?
I've had discussions with a number of individuals who've drawn all manner of things to my attention.
He looked shifty there, he really did. You know, literally they're saying in Parliament, you, Prime Minister, are you actually aware people, because of your policy, are actually going to consider committing suicide in advance of when you bring a tax in, because you are destroying their lives, you're destroying their legacy, destroying their farm, and of course destroying the inheritance to make it a working farm. So there's been a change today. On the face of it, this is good news, and I'm not going to poo-poo it. It is good news. They've raised the threshold at which you pay tax, this tax, from 1 million to 2.5 million, which actually works really well if you're in a civil partnership or you're married, because that increases the point at where you pay inheritance tax to up to 5 million. Now that will make a difference. However, don't take it from me, because I'd like to dig in and see the full implications of this with Ollie Harrison. He's a farmer who has a 180-acre farm in the northwest and regularly, well, you've been out there campaigning, haven't you, Ollie? Welcome to the show, and I guess I should say congratulations, even if it's a bit of a caveat as to what he's actually done.
Yeah, I think the word hollow victory floated around today. It's a massive, massive improvement, because it will probably take 50% of the farms out of the equation. You know, the policy originally affected 85%. So for that to be reduced significantly is massively good news. It really is. It still leaves some of the larger farms, the ones that are probably producing the most food, still caught with something that will be impossible to pay, which is still a shame. So it is not perfect.
Are those, Ollie, can I just ask you, are those larger farms the sort of really corporate-owned farms, or are they still owned by private farming, often been families doing it for generations, or are they, dare I say this before I get in trouble, the sort of Jeremy Clarkson style farmer, who, by the way, I've got a lot of time for, but you know.
I think the biggest, what you'd call an estate farm, it'd probably be around 10 million, but you've got your very small family farms that'll just sort of scrape through at the 2.5, if they're married, maybe at the 5, but you sort of slightly above average. The ones that probably generally they've got a few kids that have interest in the farm and they've pushed on, like myself, and they've bought extra land and they've got mortgages and on they go. And then they've got enough then to be able to sort of like the next generation down to be able to sort them out with a farm. But obviously there's this bill still stacking up in the background. You know, it is great because even if that farm is worth 10 million, at least the first 2.5 million is now tax-free, or if you married the first 5. But that 5 million that still could be taxed is still really unpayable, shall we say, in farming profits at the moment.
And now, is that because, and I think we learnt this, and I'm sorry to go on about it, but I learnt more about farming both from your action on the streets and watching things like Jeremy Clarkson, where you really did learn that margins are very risky. I mean, you know, you just have bad weather and you are screwed. It's a nightmare. You say, is it because the margins are so tight? The idea that you might have to pay $1 million in tax, even over 10 years, is going to pretty much destroy the business.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when you're only left with 20 or 30 a year on a good year, to suddenly find 100,000 to pay a bill that could be £1 million. I mean, I honestly, we need to sort of celebrate what has happened today in some ways.
Sure, and I think that's good of you. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
It is massive. It's so frustrating that it's took 14 months and cost lives, and to be told that they've got it right, and now suddenly actually, yeah, we've listened. Well, why didn't you in the first place? Why have we lost farmers? Why have we had to put all this energy into it? Why has everyone been under this stress for so long? It's just stupid. It should have been sorted. It should have been consulted, and then when they'd have realised, they could have got it right before they put in the budget. As far as I'm concerned now, this is sensible change. You know, let's have a conversation and get something that gets all the farmers sorted. And in essence, you could actually end up with a little bit more for the Treasury as well, which they could, you know, use for the NHS like they keep claiming. But we've got to have farms wanting to invest. So, like, the farm to sort of from my parents down to me, the 2.5 million will sort that. I've got mortgages on other farms and I've got 3 children. I know if that 2.5 million stays where it is, and inflation makes it cheaper, shall we say, but everything rises, it's nowhere near enough. So I am still not wanting to invest in agriculture at the moment.
Are you? Sorry to interrupt, Ollie. Are you arable or livestock?
I'm all arable, so we're farming around 1,500 acres.
So you go and buy a tractor, basically. What does that set you back?
Well, the last 2 we bought were 245,000 a piece. And the combine behind me is 500,000. I mean, don't get me wrong, you don't write a check for that. You pay it off over 5 years.
Sure.
I could probably get my machinery to the 2.5 million without thinking about the land. That's the thing. It's definitely progress. It really is. But in order to protect farms, the ones that are producing the most, shall we say, it still needs a little bit of clever thinking. Because don't get me wrong, there's farms worth hundreds of millions. You know, these huge ones. But they've just cast the net a bit wrong. You know, they've just that bar has always been far too low.
I mean,
10 would have been more sensible.
You speak. You touched on this, and it's my final point, if I may, with you. You kind of said, why didn't they change their minds earlier? Because all the rest of us knew this was a disaster.
Yeah.
Look, for a second, I'm going to try and remove the party politics out of this and forget it's a Labour government and so forth. What is it, do you think? What is your view of politicians that it's been such a hard year for you to arrive at a decision that, frankly, could have taken place in a couple of months? What is it? What does it make you think of politicians?
I think I've been staggered by the arrogance of the front bench. You know, that's been shocking, really. And the fact that they were so out of touch, it's £1 million is a lot of money. Well, we never see that money. It's just a tool for the trade. You know, no one owns a farm. Why should any business passing from one generation to the next with a tragedy be taxed to the point where it will break that business that employs people, pays taxes?
Exactly.
Farming case.
Do you think
we can't change our pricing structure like any other business, and that's why it was worse for us?
Well, I think the only people who would probably take heart from you today is the hospitality sector and the visitor economy, which are facing huge taxes on properties that are going to make them unprofitable. That's another story. Have you always been politically active? I mean, do you vote even and things like that? Have you always done that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't vote in the last election because in my particular constituency there wasn't really any.
I bet you regret that.
Yeah, well, yeah. No, I don't care what colour they are in charge, as long as they listen and understand, and
well,
that's the main thing. But
well, they finally did. It's been a painful journey for you. I am pleased for you, but I suggest, like all things, particularly with this government, and I would say that, wouldn't I? Let's just have our breath held that something else doesn't come and knock one of our most vital industries in the United Kingdom. Good luck, Ollie. I hope it's a happier Christmas than it could have been for you, to you, your family and all your colleagues in that amazing industry. That's Ollie Harrison, farmer from the Northwest. I should have asked him where he's from up there, sort of Northwest. I know the lakes and I know Liverpool. There you go. I'm sure he's somewhere up there. That's just annoyed the Northwest. Join me for the rest of the conversation. 0344 499 1000. Going to be talking to a sort of good friend of mine. He's certainly an expert. Simon Calder, travel correspondent for The Independent, next here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Just seen Johnny Gould, who'll be on with you from 7 o'clock this evening. I haven't seen him for ages. He's looking debonair as ever. I think this must be a family relative. Nick, I've not seen Nick on Talk before. Absolutely brilliant. More of him, please. Oh, thank you, cousin Steve in Birmingham, if that's who you are. Meanwhile, listen, we could easily overlook this, but I'm not going to, because at the end of the day, travel is really important to all of us. Simon Calder, travel correspondent, The Independent, all-round good bloke. Hello.
Nick, nice to talk to you. I'm here at Manchester Airport International arrivals. Very, very busy here. And actually, I've just been seeing mostly lovely, happy family reunions, people coming in. Upstairs from here, of course, many, many departures. This is going to be the busiest ever Christmas at Manchester Airport. Same thing goes at London Heathrow and also at Birmingham. Having said that, we've kind of got through the build up to Christmas in relatively good shape. I mean, I'm seeing the odd delay, particularly short haul flights coming in from various points in Europe, running an hour or two late, which is annoying, but neither here nor there really in the overall scheme of things. I'm a bit more worried about what's happening at Heathrow on a couple of flights. First of all, Virgin Atlantic inbound from Lagos, 7 hours late if you're expecting to meet anybody from that flight. And crucially, Etihad, the Abu Dhabi airline, has a flight coming in 2.5 hours late. And you might think, well, that's not, doesn't count for much, except that an awful lot of the hundreds of people who will be flying back to Abu Dhabi on that plane have connections, and they'll be arriving 2.5 hours late, and the plane may have flown without them. But from an aviation point of view, it's actually, I'd give it 9 out of 10 for this Christmas. I'm very pleased.
Then it begs the question, what about the roads and the rail? What sort of problems are there out there?
Okay, so the roads, we've seen problems, particularly in the northwest. The M6 was very sticky earlier, actually through Cumbria due to a few issues. Around Manchester, where I am, it's the good old M60, particularly if you are somewhere near the Trafford Centre, because so many people are going to be doing that last-minute shopping. Same thing happens on the M25 around London, around Bluewater in Kent. That's going to be busy. And also, I need to point out that the usual rules apply. Christmas Eve is going to be a busy day. The RAC says that it's going to be the busiest day actually for getaways. But bear in mind that there won't be too much commuting or other traffic around, because unlike you and me, Nick, not everybody is working this week, I've noticed.
But don't they run down? I know when I go home on Christmas Eve, I'm going home at a civilised time, about 4 or 5 o'clock when I leave the studio. But isn't it about from 7 p.m. they start to sort of have less trains and things like that into the suburbs?
Right, OK, well, let's look at the railways. First of all, it's not been too bad. What we have seen today and over the weekend as well, and what we will see tomorrow, is dozens of cancellations on cross country. That's the network that is based in Birmingham New Street and links England, Wales and Scotland, and they have serious problems with the shortage of available drivers. They blame high levels of sickness for that, and we are seeing cancellations particularly on routes like Nottingham via Birmingham to Cardiff. So that's a worry there. The crucial thing about tomorrow is that it's actually going to be a pretty good day for travelling by train, because a lot of people have already made their Christmas journey. But be aware, exactly as you say, round about tea time, services start to wind down. All the trains are all tucked up by midnight, and there won't be any trains moving till Boxing Day, when you'll have a few, particularly sort of local services and on the Chiltern line. But it's Saturday the 27th, when things get really busy.
So it's a weekend. What can we expect then?
OK, well, that's going to be interesting. So, yes, when the intercity trains sort of come back to life on Saturday, there's loads of people who want to be on them. I've been on the first train from Manchester heading for London after the bank holiday, and that's always busy, busy, busy. But the thing is, on the West Coast Main Line, which connects London with the West Midlands, North West England and southern Scotland, that from Saturday onwards is going to have serious issues with Network Rail planned engineering work. So initially it's going to be mostly Rugby to Milton Keynes, which will scupper the southern end. You really don't want to know about bus replacement services to and from Bedford and trains from there. And then further north, there are going to be issues in Lancashire and also Cumbria. In fact, the Cumbria issue, which is replacing a bridge that takes the railway over the M6. That's going to be closing the line going from kind of Preston up towards Scotland for a couple of weeks. And they're running a nice little scenic shuttle service from Preston around the Settle and Carlisle line, which I know from your background in English tourism is strongly to be recommended. It is going to add, though, a couple of hours to your trip going between London and Glasgow.
Simon, quite a tour de force, but I want to ask you about something I hope you were warned about. The new ESS system for travellers from so-called third countries to the EU. That has been rolled out since last October. It's meant to be all working beautifully by April, but it looks like a lot of the airports are saying, hey, EU, back off a bit. We're having lots of problems. How bad is it? And is it consistently bad?
It's an extraordinary story, Nick. Yes, you're quite right. So just new listeners and viewers start here. The entry-exit system is something that we chose to have applied to us when we voted to leave the European Union. We knew it was coming down the track, and we said, yes, we want to be subject to this, please. And it requires you and me on our first registration under the entry-exit system to be fingerprinted and photographed. After the first one, it's supposed to be just photograph only, a facial biometric, but there's indications that's not exactly working. They've given themselves, the EU, a 6-month spell to roll this out, due to be finished by the 9th of April. But exactly as you say, Airports Council International in Brussels are saying this just isn't working. It's mad. We have seen processing times where at the airports where this is being used up 70%. We are seeing 3-hour queues. Can you please just pause, get it all sorted out, and then we'll have another go?
And will that happen?
Well, the European Commission, when I put this to them, said, no, it's all going terribly well. And we don't know what the airports are talking about. And it's all going to be fine by April. We're actually doing better than we thought we
Lord.
would.
You mean politicians in touch with what's going on, obviously. Listen, let me give you this final anecdote, because just between us and all these viewers and listeners, I often send Simon a message reporting on whichever airport I've been to. Alicante, for the first time, was having lots of problems, and they applied a real Spanish solution to it. They just said, sod it, and let everyone through. There you go. That's how to do it, Simon Calder in Manchester. Have a fantastic Christmas, and I look forward to talking to you in the new year. That was Simon Calder giving you a little update if you're planning on travelling and going around. Now, do I have time to take a call? Yes, I'm getting a nod. Let's quickly go to Peter in Dorset.
Hello, good evening.
Hello, Peter. We're going to have to be reasonably quick, but the floor is yours, and thank you so much for calling.
You had a previous caller who said that with death to the IDF, it meant the death of all Israelis, both men and women, which means they must be also completely in favour of the Holocaust. And when you consider in this country that we had our British soldiers uncovering the concentration camps and seeing what they did, and seeing how we freed Europe and in the Second World War, and we've now come to a situation where we've got a government which is saying that they don't want this Britishness about us anymore. They want nice collective internationalism about everything, and all they're doing is causing complete and utter mayhem on the streets, and now complete and utter violence, and promoting it. And so are the other governments around the world. And it's about time people sat up and just quashed this situation. If people in this country who are British and want to be British and want some Britishness back in this country, then this stuff has to be quashed. We can't be having it on the streets of London. We're ruining London. People don't even want to come and visit London anymore because of what's going on.
It's quite shameful that it's come to this, but it was entirely predictable, wasn't it? If you think about the marches that took place, we didn't come down on those. If you think about then the decision to recognise Palestine, it's literally been inevitable that we would end up with people who were found, fortunately, and apprehended in Manchester, plotting, literally, quite simply, to go and kill Jews in England. Was there not an element of predictability about it?
Well, Nick, the fact of the matter is that we have, I'm sorry to say it, we have a blatant anti-Semitic government, because if it wasn't blatantly anti-Semitic, it would have crushed this situation. It would have crushed this hatred that is going on, and they are promoting it. And all this talk, it's like sort of a quip, two-tier police system. Basically, it's two-tier, Semitic or not Semitic.
Wow.
And basically,
Peter, can I want to put in one point there. I'm not taking away from anything you said, but I think we ought to remember some of these marches took place under the last government as well. And I'm sure the government would say they weren't anti-Semitic, but you would expect them to say that, and it's only fair for me to say that. But some of those marches and some of the language we were hearing took place under the last government as well. Listen, Peter, thank you for your call. I'm only being a bit brutal there to cut it off because I know we've got Michael in Hertfordshire, and then I'm going to go to my next guest. Michael, hello.
Hi, good evening. Yeah, it's about the anti-Semitism again. So the thing is, anything that says death to anyone in a song or preached should be stopped. It's just ridiculous.
Well, we get it in rap music, I think. There's some rap music.
It's ridiculous. But let me give you an example. If there was a bishop or a rabbi preaching death to the Islamics, there would be riots in the streets and they would be arrested. There are pictures of imams from mosques preaching hate. It's been on video and nobody does anything.
It's the build-up of hate, and that has allowed people to fuel some of the worst examples of anti-Semitism that we've seen.
But the problem is, it's just not anti-Semitism, if I can just explain. If you look at any of the Arab countries in the Middle East, they are killing each other. Extremists on both sides, there's different sects.
Sure.
And they are killing each other. Do people honestly think if all the Jewish people left England, it would stop?
No, I don't think they do. And in fact,
they would pick on other people because they are extremists.
Well, our caller was saying actually she's not sure where it's safe for Jews to go. That was, Nicole Lambert, who was being interviewed by us. Look, Michael, great. I know you're from Hertfordshire, the great county of Hertfordshire, where I live as well. Thank you for joining us. My both calls making some very strong points there. You can join the conversation 03444 99 1000. And later on, I'm going to be talking to Peter Cardwell, of course, who has been leading the charge from this station about Bob Vylan and getting him charged before the deadline of the 28th. That's obviously not been successful. I'm going to get his reaction and more. Coming up next, we're going to be touching on with our Sun Sport correspondent, Stott. You can join me here on 0344 499 1000.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And Dean Scoggins, the Deputy Head of Sport for The Sun, is here to talk to me about, well, cricket, drinking, partying.
Yes. And yeah, well, cricket, drinking, partying, it should be in that order though, shouldn't it? But we haven't seen much cricket from the England team at the moment. So yeah, big problem.
So what's going on? It looks like, I picked it up just as I came in the studio, funny enough, lots of blokes going away for a long time abroad, went out and had quite a few drinks, allegedly.
Yes, and amongst the fans as well, who have paid a heck of a lot of money to go over there and watch them be 3-0 down. Now, we should add that this video that is alleged was between the second and third test, so at this point they're 2-0 down.
And what's the video of?
The video is of Ben Duckett, the England opener, slurring his words, not knowing his way back to the hotel, apparently. And then the fans have recorded him and posted this out there. So Rob Key, the Director of Cricket, was already investigating all of these claims of a stag do environment away at the Ashes. You know, there were loads of pictures of them on the beach in Noosa. And look, we're not for a second saying they shouldn't have a day off and they shouldn't be able to, on a long tour away from their families, as you say, you know, let their hair down a little bit. But it's not a great look when you've been as poor. Let's not forget this is the worst tour to date that there's ever been. They've lost the Ashes in record time. And, you know, We'd like to see them celebrating drinking if they'd won a test.
Yeah, I suppose, look, I'm a completely different generation. I'm sort of, if I ever went on a tour, admittedly it was never for England.
Yeah.
I can say part of the deal was we were going to have a few fun nights out. That was just how it went. So is there a danger we can get too pious about this? I mean, look, you know, fans have paid good money. They should be seeing them at their best. They have a gripe as well. But is there going to be a pile-on? You know?
Yeah, I think a lot will depend on what happens on Christmas Day night in the next test. I mean, if England come away from this losing 3-1 in the series, drawing one test and winning one, and showing that they can respond to this, then that will change those. But at the moment, it's just not good optics at all, is it? I mean, you know, I've all for an England team. They've been fantastic, by the way, for the last few years, bringing people back to cricket, watching cricket. I'm a huge cricket fan, a huge Test cricket fan. And I say, I grew up at Sandwich Town Cricket Club and we did know how to have a beer or two. But normally it was on the back of a celebration and, you know, we weren't as happy when we'd lost a game.
Well, I think they should be given a right talking to, because the biggest sin, isn't it, is not turning up for training. We had the culture of work hard, play hard. And I'm not talking about sport here, you know.
Everything,
my professional life, it was work hard, play hard, and you were there at 7 o'clock in the morning if you needed to be. So they're right to get a bit of a rollicking.
Absolutely.
I just hope we don't see another pile on, because we have this habit of piling on.
I think the Aussie press will do that for them tomorrow, and
well, that might wake them up.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. And one of the great comments from one of the fans in this was, "Do you want me to get you an Uber to the Nets, bro?" Which was not back home, back to the Nets. Ben Duckett, who is average 16.
That's got to be an English fan, hasn't it?
I think
that
so.
Is English humour.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and you know, it is a shame, because we were really hopeful that they would not necessarily, you know, win down under, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do even for the best England teams. But you know, we wanted to see some nail-biting Test matches with the Bazball approach. And all that the Bazball word has done now is be throw back in their faces. And I'll reveal the headline on the back page tomorrow is Boozball, not Bazball.
It's made for the Sun, this story, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
It is absolutely made for the Sun. Now, I'm a Liverpool fan for my sins this season, after such a glorious season last year. Alexander Isak, 148 million, was it? I think we paid for that.
Yes.
And he did nothing for a while. He was match unfit. He was just getting back to form. Now he's got a broken leg. And Arne Slot's having a pop at the guy who tackled him. Any justification for that?
I don't think so. And Thomas Frank, the Tottenham manager, has responded, because Arne Slot called it a reckless challenge which broke Isak's leg. I think I just don't understand why a manager like Arne Slot would get involved in that sort of language. Like nobody, perhaps, but nobody wanted Alexander Isak to get injured, right? No, of course Mickey van der Ven didn't. He's flown across there to try and block a shot as a defender would, and as Thomas Frank says, it's a true defender's tackle. And I'm sure Mickey van der Ven is feeling terrible that as a result of the tackle there's an injury, but this wasn't a reckless, endangering the safety, intentionally tackle, you know, and it is a contact sport, and unfortunately at times accidents happen. But yeah, Slot's not happy. He says it is a reckless challenge. If you make a tackle like that 10 times there is a serious chance that the player gets serious injury. So he's not held back.
He's letting off steam. He's had a go. It probably won't mean great relations between him and Thomas Frank, but that will go away. But the legacy of this for Isak is... my wife, who I didn't know even really, she claims to be a Spurs supporter. I think she still thinks Harry Redknapp's manager. But she was kind of saying, oh, well, if it's a break, it's quite relatively easier to come back than a ligament or something. But Isak's going to be match unfit again, is it? When will we see him back?
It's going to take a long time. They've not given us the sort of time frame of how bad the break is. At the moment, they're talking 2 months, but as you quite rightly say, that will be 2 months until he resumes proper training. So you're probably talking 3 months before you see him on the grass.
We're not going to see any return on that investment.
Not until the latter stages of knockout stages of the Champions League.
When it might or might not matter.
Yes, yeah, perhaps.
Lucky us, And what about Chelsea?
Yeah, Chelsea, Antoine Semenyo is the hot topic in the transfer window. So, as all our readers love a transfer story, this will be on our back page tomorrow as well. And basically, Chelsea are now front of the queue for Bournemouth's Antoine Semenyo. So we know Tottenham are very interested and have already sort of made the inquiry. Semenyo, understandably, and the form he's in, wants one of the real big boys, and I'm a Tottenham fan, so I can definitely say this, that Tottenham aren't quite in that echelon.
Definitely not, about 13th, aren't you?
Absolutely, yeah, but Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal will all be sniffing around him. And interestingly though, he's got a clause in his contract where you can get him for 65 million, which, when you're mentioning the figures you were before, that's a bit of a snip for Antoine Semenyo, but it expires on the 10th of January, so it's a proper race that's on, because Bournemouth have very, very cleverly put this date in there so that if they do end up losing him, as these clubs often do, then they've got time to go and replace him before the end of the window.
Interesting times. It's big business, football. We always have to remember that. Listen, that's Dean Scoggins, who is the deputy sports editor for The Sun, deputy head of sport, I'm sorry, for The Sun. It'll all be on the back pages tomorrow, and you just have to get a copy, really, to see the headline about the England cricketers. Give it this once again.
Just boozeball.
Yeah,
that's all you need.
It's going to be good. I'm on air tomorrow. I'll wave a copy around to do that. Dean, thanks very much indeed for joining us today. Actually, very quick question for you. Is it going to be City or Arsenal this year, or Arsenal going to flake as they normally do about January?
Well, I said on I do a tactics show on YouTube, Tactics Exposed, and I've said on my show for weeks that if Arsenal don't win it this year, I'm not sure when they will. No. I still think they'll do it, and I still think they'll do it comfortably. They're just having a little wobble.
Spurs man, isn't that fascinating, isn't it? Okay, thanks very much again, Dean. Cheers. Right, coming up at the top of the hour, I'm pretty sure we're going to be dragging Peter Cardwell in, well, not into the studio, he's on holiday. He's been all over the Bob Villan. Well, frankly, I think it's shocking and outrageous that he hasn't been charged. We'll be talking to Peter about that in Manchester. And then, least surprising news of the day, half of voters think Prime Minister Keir Starmer will be replaced as Prime Minister by the end of 2026, a poll tells us. I don't think they wasted the money on the poll. I could have probably told them that, and I think that's even underestimated as well. Joe Twyman will be here to talk to me about that, and we continue the conversation here with me on Drive.
Libya has become a major transit route for refugees and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, and many of them come through Libya dreaming of getting to the UK, particularly from Sudan, where there has been a civil war waging for the last 2 years. And those asylum seekers or economic migrants who make it from Sudan to the UK have a 99% chance of being given leave to remain. So I spent several hours talking to immigration chiefs here in Benghazi on the east side of Libya. The Libyan National Army has a very good grip on the immigration problem, albeit fighting against a huge crisis with limited resources. There is a very, very clear process of giving people proper health checks, the life-saving care that they need, and then working out where it is exactly that they've come from. Their message to the UK is that you are fueling this problem. You are effectively advertising a great new life for people from sub-Saharan Africa. They actually said, you know, what do you think happens when a guy from Sudan comes up through Libya and makes his way all the way to the UK and gets put in a luxurious hotel and provided with everything? And make no mistake, it is a perilous journey. We see it from the end point. We see the Channel crossing as the dangerous bit, but actually where these journeys begin is in the hot desert. Many, many tens of kilometers have to be covered on foot by these migrants, and as many as 1 in 4 do not make it. That means bodies in the desert. The Libyan authorities are having to recover bodies in the desert. About the UK and how much awareness. Please understand the scale of what we are dealing with here with very, very limited resources. Once again, you know, people come in from charities, from NGOs, they use warm words, and the authorities here told me the only thing that we ever get
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And welcome back to Drive with me, Nick de Bois. It's a pleasure to have your company. I'm just going to rattle off this particular message from Barry. I'm pleased for the farmers, Nick, but I do wish they would be manners on occasion and pull over in their tractors when there is a huge line of traffic behind them. Well, Barry, quite a lot of them are a bit happier today. Not all of them, and there's still a few catches and glitches in the proposal from Labour, but I suspect they won't be blocking the motorways for you. Now, going back to something that's dominated our conversation today, I'll just remind you of the facts. An investigation by the Avon and Somerset Police into the chants made during the Bob Vylan performance at Glastonbury has concluded no further action will be taken. I'll just read the quote. "We have concluded, after reviewing all the evidence, that it wasn't that much, was there? It was pretty clear that it does not meet the criminal threshold outlined by the CPS for any person to be prosecuted," the force said in a statement. "No further action will be taken on the basis there is insufficient evidence for there to be a realistic prospect of conviction." Now, this investigation was also described by the Avon and Somerset Police, as I managed to scan through the full press release, as complex. I'll just leave that word hanging there. The investigation relates, of course, to the chance of death to the IDF, that's the Israeli Defence Forces, and other comments made during the band's performance on the Westholt stage, which was, of course, broadcast by a live stream on BBC iPlayer. And those other comments were, of course, from the River to the Sea chant, which we've all been discussing. I'm not an expert in the law, but I'm baffled as to this decision. Many of you are. Some have defended it in the name of free speech. But someone from Talk who has really led on this, and I think galvanised all of us into pushing the Somerset and Avon Police into not just staying quiet with their decision or not to prosecute until the deadline passed on the 28th, but has championed and hassled and really gone after them on this, and rightly so, is our very own Peter Cardwell, who I know you're on holiday, Peter, but thank you very much for joining us.
Not at all, Nick, and this is absolutely disgraceful. This is something that is so absolutely clearly calling for the death of a large number of people. There are loads of concerns I have about that statement you referenced there as well, Nick, not least that officers said they spoke to approximately 200 members of the public to see if they had been the victim of a criminal offence. Well, first of all, it's not up to the public to decide whether they've been victims of a criminal offence or not. It is possible that the police conducted a survey of sorts as to whether people felt harassed, alarmed or distressed, racially aggravated by those comments. Now, if they only spoke to 200 people, were those people at Glastonbury? Were they people in the area? Was that something that was technically done correctly? Is that something that is in any way reasonable? And also, any poll of people in this country, for example, as you know from politics, and I know as well, will be somewhere in the region of 2,000 people. So how was this done? Was it properly done? If people who just attended Glastonbury, well, they are not, as a sample, a reasonable sample of members of society. People who go to Glastonbury are predominantly, not all of them, but predominantly on the left. It's a shocking decision. The Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset Police, Sarah Crew, along with her CPS acolytes, dragged this out for 178 days. They interviewed Pascal Robinson Foster for his anti-Semitism, and it is my strongly held personal belief that he is an anti-Semite. And what has happened is he lied at various points, not necessarily to them, but he lied at various points. He said, oh, it's just the institution I'm talking about. I'm just talking about the Israeli Defense Force, as if that's in some way better. I'm not talking about individual soldiers. Well, actually, a few weeks prior to Glastonbury, he had another concert where he specifically spoke about death to Israeli soldiers. That is what he meant. It is absolutely clear that is what he meant. Free speech is absolutely fine. I'm absolutely for free speech. If he had said the IDF are committing genocide, which I strongly disagree with, but people have a right to say it. If he said the IDF are dreadful people and the strategy of the IDF and the strategy of Israel is a dreadful thing, that's fine. I disagree with it. I think they're awful people, da-da-da. That's fine. That's free speech. He was calling for their deaths. And I think right now, the only thing that needs to happen, apart from Pascal Robinson Foster being arrested, this being reviewed and judicially reviewed as soon as possible, is the Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset Police, Sarah Crew, resigning immediately. She has no moral authority whatsoever. And I have asked her press release and her press office, who in fairness have been pretty good in all of this and been pretty fair-minded, reasonable people. I have asked them time and time again in the last few days, if London and Manchester police have said that globalised intifada is something for which you can be arrested, is it the case in the Avon and Somerset policing area that if you say globalise the intifada, you can be arrested? Answer has come there. None have asked them twice. And similarly, just as a final point, Nick, if you're going to arrest someone, or indeed not arrest someone, for saying globalise the intifada, surely death to the IDF is a very similar phrase. It's against Jews, it's against the Israeli Defense Force in the second aspect of that, and it should be really, really clear. Insufficient evidence, it was on the BBC. Millions of people saw it. This is a shambles, and anti-Semites right across the UK will sleep a lot easier in their beds tonight when they put stuff online, when they say similar things. It's a farce.
Peter, a brilliant articulation of why this is such a bad decision. But there's also even wider implications, aren't they? Particularly on the day where we learnt in Manchester, thanks to the heroic efforts of an undercover officer, that an attack on Jews was planned and been put, going so far as to get the guns and so forth. That we now have a situation where Manchester and London, as you say, have taken a stance. They've actually strengthened their view about arresting people who are making, frankly, obscene chants and demonstrations and effectively calling for the death of Jews. And yet here we are now, probably 2 weeks later, with the complete reverse decision being made. We either have policing by county now and no national view on how to respond to these anti-Semitic and frankly life-threatening threats, but it will give succor to those now. It will encourage people.
You're absolutely right. And if you want to be anti-Semitic, maybe go to Avon and Somerset. Maybe that's a place where you can say globalise the intifada and death to the IDF and nothing will happen to you. It's not two-tier policing, it's multi-tier policing. It is policing by postcode. It is geographically Nobody knows what the law is, what it's meant to be. You have people like Lucy Connolly, who wrote an absolutely dreadful and horrible tweet, who was sent to prison but for what she wrote. Yet you have someone who is, again, on the left, saying death to the IDF, and nothing happens. There's insufficient evidence. I mean, we're through the looking glass here, Nick. This was on the BBC. Millions of people saw it. He was kept on by the BBC for another 40 minutes, which is a side issue, but nonetheless an important issue. They said themselves their editorial standards had been breached. The law was also breached. And the Crown Prosecution Service, which has decided to prosecute people, for example, like Lucy Connolly and others, well, actually, they're in a position tonight where there is no equality of justice. There's no equality under the law. What there is anti-Semites who are saying what they're saying. There are people saying ridiculous and horrible and awful things in our society, and they are let off free. That's what's happening.
We had the excellent journalist, and I know you know her well, Nicole Lambert, on.
She's great.
And I said to her, look, we're analysing the problem. We're all agreeing what the problem is. But what is it that is needed to turn the tide on the fact that we've reached a stage in this country where Jewish people do not feel safe, seriously thinking of leaving the country? Anti-Semitism is at a level that I never thought I would see in this country. But I said, what is it that we need? And she said, we have to have clarity and strong government on the issue. What do you think that looks like? What does strong government on this issue look like that could help turn the tide?
Nicole is absolutely right, and she usually is. She's right on this one. And the fact is that on so many issues, but particularly in regard to anti-Semitism, we are crying out for leadership. Now, Keir Starmer can say all he likes. He can light as many candles on a menorah as he wants to. He can have as many receptions as he wants. He can talk about how wonderful Jewish leaders are. And that's all welcome. There's nothing wrong with that. But you've got to have clear moral leadership to say, look, you can disagree with the Israeli government, what the Israeli government does, all you want. You can have as many different arguments about that as you want. But when he recognized the Palestinian state, when he said that essentially there is a great and clear moral choice of our age, and we're going with the guys that hate our way of life. We're going with Hamas. Those are the people we've decided to go with. That, to me, is a very clear indication that he doesn't get it, he doesn't understand it. And for Jews in this country, 61% of whom in a recent poll said they were thinking of leaving and going to Israel. That is appalling. I'm not Jewish. I have a lot of Jewish friends. I've got a few more, actually, over the last few years since I've been talking about this issue quite a lot. But it's not even about that. It's just a really clear, straightforward, what's right and what's wrong here.
And Peter, is it just, you see, there's part of me, and you will understand this, I don't want to think that Keir Starmer is a bad man and a bad person, but I can't help but think he's made decisions like recognising Palestine for all the wrong reasons. Is he chasing votes of a growing community?
Yes. Look, it was a cynical move that was very little to do with the Middle East. It was all to do with the backbenches of his party, that he recognised Palestine. The fact is, after that welfare vote, where something like 120 MPs were there, the tail that's wagging the dog, and he said, look, we can get on with this, we can do this. It's not going to actually make a blind button of difference internationally or to the Middle East. It's not going to save any lives. It's not going to make lives of Palestinian people any better. But we're going to join something like 140 different countries that recognise the Palestinian state. We're going to do that. My MPs are going to be happy. They'll both be at my back for a while. For a long time, he resisted this. There's a really good book, which if you haven't read, I'd definitely recommend it. Gabriel Pogrund and Patrick Maguire's book, Get In, which talks about the number of times he resisted this and why has he decided to do it. He's decided to do it for very cynical political reasons. And what annoys me hugely is any political leader, and there are many of them, who will cynically say, oh yes, anti-Semitism is a dreadful thing, we have to do so much about it, and then do absolutely sweet FA about it. £10 million for greater security. Well, yeah, we need greater security for schools and cultural centres and so on, but we need to tackle the root problem.
Well, exactly, that is the flaw. It's a bit like saying we're going to move illegal immigrants from hotels to a camp and not tackle the cause and reasons why people are coming over here.
You're absolutely right, Nick. Some of it's to do with immigration, some of it's to do with attitudes of people who are Islamists, but a lot of it is to do with people who are middle-class liberals who are sitting in their dinner parties saying, oh yes, isn't Israel dreadful? Well, actually, the Jews are whining a bit and maybe getting a bit uppity about all of this. Actually, would you say that about black people? Would you say that about Muslims? Would you say that about lesbians? Would you say that about women? If people hear this kind of stuff, if they hear this kind of anti-Semitism, if they see a report of someone who is, Jewish people who are saying swastikas have been painted on their homes, or urine has been thrown or whatever, and they go, oh yeah, isn't that dreadful? Do something about it. Call it out. Talk on social media, ring in a station like Talk, and talk about how you are in solidarity with these people, because they're the same as you or me.
Well, I know you're not here yourself now on a well-earned break, but I can assure you those calls and those messages are coming in. Peter, thank you so much for taking time. A huge credit to Peter, because I think across Talk he has led the charge on this one, and I've always rated him, but I rate him even more now. Let's have your view. 0344 499 1000. Voice message or call. That's what Joan's done in Sunderland. Hello, Joan. Joan, hello.
Hello. I've already spoken to Peter about this a while ago.
Okay.
And quite honestly, I am totally and utterly shocked. Something smells here. They've sat on this for months, and now there's nothing to nothing to see here, nothing to answer. Now this guy has form, because Peter had a form.
Which guy? Sorry.
Dylan Villan, whatever his
Bob
name
Villan.
is.
Yes.
Yes. And when he was in the Netherlands, it was either the day of Charlie Kirk's funeral or the day after, and that guy was gloating the names he called Charlie Kirk. He'd never even met the man, I don't suppose. It's just an absolute disgrace. And this is not just two-tier policing. That woman, that head of Avon and Somerset Police, she wants to resign. We are getting this all the time. Two-tier policing, and it's just anti-Semitism.
Well, Joan, literally, you're from Sunderland, right? Yes. I have no idea what your chief of police would do in Sunderland if they were presented with the same facts. But the bottom line is, we know what Manchester think, we know what London think, we know what Avon and Somerset think. We don't just have, as Peter said, two-tier policing. We have something like 52 tiers of policing, because each police, that's how many police forces there are, or thereabouts.
Exactly. I would sack every police and crime commissioner in the country, because they're an absolute waste of space.
Well, I think the Labour Party, to be fair, are going to try and do that. So that's something you might want to agree with them on.
Yes. They shouldn't have been brought into being in the first place. They're a total waste of space.
But do you ever... I mean, I said it, when I said it, I thought, am I overreacting? But I'm actually quite ashamed that Jewish people are now essentially thinking this is no longer their country and they want to leave. Do you share my sentiment, if not feel perhaps like I do about it?
Yes, I mean, I phoned in when that football match was supposed to be being cancelled because of safety. That was anti-Semitism under another name. But also with that, what I want to know is 700 police officers were brought in to police that. How much did that cost? And it was lies.
It would have cost a huge amount of money. Normally the clubs pick up the bill. I don't know if that's what happened in those circumstances. But the other thing about that, we should never forget this, is that when the decision was announced to cancel the supporters from coming to the match, that actually the police said we had consulted with the Israeli football team and supporters, and they agree. And that was a lie. And they've been summoned to Parliament to explain themselves. That's the sort of thing that breeds the idea that there's basically a stitch-up going on, which is why you think something's gone on here. Listen, Joan, lovely call. Thank you very much. I think you've expressed what an awful lot of people are thinking. That's Joan from Sunderland. I haven't pre-read this, so I'm just going to read it one or two out. Nick, so based on Avon and Somerset Police, I can go on TV and social media calling for the death of the Labour cabinet. I haven't committed an offence. I can use the excuse I was calling for the death of the institution, not the people. This decision not to prosecute Pascal Robinson Foster is palpably a political decision and doesn't follow the law. The Chief Constable has to go. Echo it, and that's from Michael Wilkinson in Lincoln. That's pretty much exactly what Peter Cardwell was doing. Tony Alex, Peter Cardwell speaks calmly and so accurately. Well done, Peter. Actually, I agree with you, and he's a joy to listen to, but I think Peter was angry there, and I thought I could tell that, and rightly so. I'm not saying he was any less professional for it, but yes, he does. Make sense of this. Bob Villan gets away with calling for the death of Jews on the same day 3 terrorists are jailed after plotting a mass slaughter of Jews in Manchester. It really is quite extraordinary. Coming up next, the worst kept secret has been confirmed by a poll. Over half of voters think Keir Starmer will be replaced as Prime Minister by the end of 2026, a poll suggests. I'm going to talk to a pollster and find out what he thinks. And actually, I'll probably ask him, was it worth doing this? Because I think we all knew that. 0344 499 1000. Still time to join the conversation with me, Nick de Bois, here on Drive.
The Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Had a curious message here from, I can't even pronounce the name, it's not a real name, I think, it's a pseudonym. Why are you scared to name Avon and Somerset Police Chief? Spot the irony, and then gives me the quote of the Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset Police Chief is Sarah Crewe, which nobody's scared of mentioning. In fact, Peter repeatedly mentioned it, who then basically, I think, I can't read the whole thing out because it goes on too long, but I think he's trying to make the point that she was appointed very much with an announcement that talked about leading with a focus on fairness, community trust and tackling issues like hate crime, etc. And I think the point is he's making some irony about her announcement that was made, but I'm not quite sure why he thinks we're scared to mention it. There you go, Sarah Crewe, Sarah Crewe, Sarah Crewe. head of the police in Somerset and Avon. Okay, right, moving on. The least surprising news is that, according to a poll, half of voters think Starmer will be replaced as Prime Minister by the end of 2026. Now, that poll has come out building on the unease on the Labour Party backbenchers, because they're all in dire shape in the polls, and people like Wes Streeting out there on manoeuvres, Andy Burnham, not even an MP, trying to become Prime Minister or leader of the party, then Prime Minister. You know, we've got them all at it. Apparently, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, Angela Rayner, you know, the sort of person who I'm not even sure. I read a report that she hasn't still paid her stamp duty, and yet everyone seems to want to welcome her back as the into the cabinet. She wants to be leader as well. Oh, on it goes. Joe Twyman, founder of Delta Poll, and I think I've done interviews, Joe, with you for many years. Welcome and happy Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas, Nick.
We're not really surprised at this, are we? I mean, in fact, only half of the people think he'll be Prime Minister by the end of the year. I think that's a bit low.
Yeah, I mean, what this poll shows is that Keir Starmer is not very popular, and that will not be an enormous revelation to anyone who has been listening to your show, or indeed awake over the last 12 months. It's the time of year that we tend to get these kind of questions, asking, okay, in 12 months' time, what will happen, and getting people, the average person in the street, and the 50% of people less engaged than the average person in the street, to predict what will happen is always difficult. And even those so-called experts who speculate about what may or may not happen don't really know. But what this, as I say, shows is that whether you ask in terms of personal popularity, or whether you ask in terms of voting intention, or whether you ask in terms of will he be in the job in the next 12 months, Keir Starmer has had a bad year, and this is not a good result for him.
I mean, it is quite interesting, because he got booed at the Royal Variety Show when his name was mentioned, I think, there. I'm sure there've been other instances. And Dean Scoggins was in. He's the deputy head of sport at The Sun. I was talking to him earlier. Off air as we left, he said, oh, we're about to put it on our front page on The Sun, or not the front page, on their digital version of The Sun. He was booed at the darts, apparently, and someone said, if you hate Keir Starmer, stand up. And one of the darts players was encouraging people to stand up, and they were jeering him like mad at a darts contest. He's not even there.
Yeah, not great news. If you were being positive about this, however, you would say that there doesn't need to be a general election for 3.5 years. And 3.5 years ago, Boris Johnson was talking about his plans for a third term as Prime Minister. So it just goes to illustrate quite how much.
Well, he might not have given up on that. You never know, Joe.
Yes, exactly. But as every day goes past, and the numbers for whether it's Keir Starmer specifically or the Labour government generally, every day that goes past and those numbers don't improve, the more difficult the situation gets.
But Joe, everything in a way, there's almost, it feels like there's an unstoppable momentum, not just in the media. I don't buy it's the media doing this, because this has been fueled by all sorts of things, whether it's polls or backbenchers or ministers briefing or speaking off the record to journalists. It feels a bit like an unstoppable momentum that there's going to be at least a leadership challenge. But whilst I don't expect to draw you on the politics of it, is he at a point in the polls where you could look back in the past and say, he is so unpopular, the government is so unpopular, those MPs will now be thinking, we need a change to save our seats? Does it compare to previous leadership challenges where you get to that point, the MPs want their seats saved?
In some senses, yes. Certainly, the Conservatives when they were in government last time around were not shy of switching leaders when they became unpopular. But the last 10 to 15 years of British politics, if it's taught us anything, it's that nothing can be guaranteed, but at the same time, nothing can be ruled out. And so, while I do think it's certainly perfectly possible that this could happen, I don't think it is guaranteed. And of course, what it needs is an obvious candidate for whom there is a constituency of support within the Parliamentary Labour Party, but also some sort of facility or levers available to that leader to actually change the situation. Now, it may be that Keir Starmer could argue that, well, if another leader comes in, what are they going to do? Now, perhaps that's why we've heard over the last few days speculation about, for instance, the United Kingdom rejoining the EU customs union as a way to bring about, they would argue, economic growth. Now, that's a particular change that could happen, but it illustrates the kind of thing that might potentially be open to a new leader that Keir Starmer has ruled out. But that in itself is certainly not a decision that could be made without substantial risks to public opinion.
It's interesting what you say about the ability to remove a leader. One thing to talk about it, one thing to think it's the right thing to do. The Conservatives had a very simple mechanism. The numbers varied, but if you've got a certain number of MPs who wrote a secret letter to the chairman of the 1922, the Backbench Committee, that's it. You've got a vote of confidence called in the Prime Minister. If they lose that, they're either out or a leadership contest takes place. Labour have a mechanism, but it's a bit unclear if Labour MPs have the appetite to remove someone. And if they did choose to do that, or even if the Cabinet persuaded Keir Starmer to stand down in time-honoured fashion and spend more time with the family, what is the evidence to suggest that a new leader, even if you know what they stand for, is the answer to Labour's problems, which speaks to how deep are their problems? Have they just lost the trust and confidence now, and people are investing that elsewhere, including Reform and including the Greens?
Well, that's the big question that Labour as a party faces, but also those MPs that you talked about face. The reality probably is that Keir Starmer has to want to go. It is far more difficult to actually remove a leader a Labour leader who is in Downing Street, particularly given the size of the Labour majority. It would have to take a really large number of MPs to actually make that move in absolute terms, and so yes, it's difficult. But of course, come the elections in May, that could be a really deeply damaging night for Labour. It may be that Keir Starmer decides, actually, what is the point in all of this, and am I simply making things worse? If that were to happen, then yes, he could choose to go, but it's very difficult to see whether there would be substantial change. When new leaders have taken over on both sides, whether it's Labour or Conservative, you generally see a small bump in public opinion in favour of the new leader. But we're talking about 2%, perhaps at most 5%. And that's, remember, at a time usually when the leader who is being replaced is extremely unpopular themselves. And so, yes, you go from a really bad position to a slightly less worse position. But historically, at least, there really hasn't been a situation where suddenly you have this enormous turnaround in fortunes. And that is something that obviously all the leader potential candidates that we've heard about will be aware of.
Joe, as ever, Joe Twyman, founder of Delta Poll, fabulous to talk to you and get that insight. It's harder to remove a sitting Prime Minister than most people think, even though the Tories managed to do it quite a few times. Coming up next, your calls, your messages. Let's have some fun. Half an hour to go of this show, then Johnny Gould coming up at 7 o'clock. Continue the conversation with me, Nick de Bois, here on Drive, 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Does the Bob Vylan, I've got a thing about that, haven't I? Bob Dylan, Bob Villain, it's quite easy, really. What's the problem with me? Does he mean I can go out whenever I want chanting death, death to Palestine action and face no sanctions whatsoever, says Sean from Bridlington. You know, I know you say that to make a point, but there will be people who hate Jewish people, that rather sick-minded individuals who will take licence from this decision to think that they can do things. And this country has to stop that. It really is as simple as that. Well, it's simple to say. It seems very hard for this government to do it. I'm horrified to hear that the guy from Glastonbury isn't going to be charged with inciting violence against the IDF. There must be some Jewish lawyers in the UK, or any lawyers, that could bring a private prosecution against this guy, since the police are failing in their duty to investigate thoroughly and charge him. It's pathetic. Leslie from Rugby says, yeah, private prosecution. Now that would be interesting, wouldn't it? Might not give you the total satisfaction you want, but it certainly is out there. Right, let's go to Kevin in Portsmouth. Hello, Kevin.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much. Thanks for listening, and the time is yours.
Yeah, well, very happy Christmas to you.
Thank you.
Now, we've been talking about Islamic terrorism. I know quite a few Muslims over here. A few of them will come down the pub. They won't have a drink, obviously. They'll have a soft drink. That's fine. They've integrated. Nice people. Problem with them is, if they're being intimidated by the real hardline imams, who are basically saying death, death to all non-Muslims, starting with the Jews and followed by the Christians, so that's both of us gone for a ball of chalk straight away, then we have to realize that this is a major internal sort of Trojan horse type of scenario. We got to start spying on mosques, bugging mosques, identifying the imams, kicking them out, identifying those who go there and investigating them, and if necessary, kick those out too. And if push comes to shove, bulldoze the mosque.
It's it's a really interesting, because you're basically saying, and don't have a go at me because I'm just paraphrasing here. Basically saying civil liberties, put it on ice. We've got a huge problem here. Let's deal with it. The only point I'd make to you is, we don't actually know what MI5 are doing, but they're the people who are meant to be looking after this, and it's quite hard to think they're not going around trying to get licenses to bug and follow people, because we obviously don't hear enough about that stuff.
Well, quite rightly so as well. But what we also don't hear from our illustrious leaders, that this is the course we want to take.
Well, they need to spell it out.
Direction of travel.
Nicole Lambert, the journalist, was talking about this. She said the government have got to take a firm line. You may have heard Peter Cardwell talking about it, saying they're not. They've talked one thing and sent wrong signals that have literally encouraged people to think anti-Semitism is okay.
Well, I mean, again, look at the recent history of the Labour Party. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn was overtly anti-Semitic, but this lot are still overtly pro-Islamic, illegal terrorists or otherwise.
And in hock to a vote that they think they'll lose.
In hock to a vote. What they can't understand, and this includes all the nut jobs on the marches, you know, your trans and your gays and all the rest of them, that come the caliphate, they'll be the first ones taking impromptu flying lessons off the top of a car park.
The thing is, those marches are made up of all sorts of people, including middle-class people who want to talk around a dinner table about Palestine and how they went on a march. It's an extraordinary mix of people, as well as people, many people from Muslim faith, many, I'm sure, who are genuinely horrified of what has been going on. But it's also captured by people who have foul signs up, advocating anti-Semitism, advocating global intifada, you know. So, and there are people who they go to these things, they come from their little dinner party in Hampstead or whatever, think they're doing something really worthwhile. They should walk away in disgust
Absolutely. Now, again, we've got legislation to deal with this. We've got hate speech laws and everything else.
Yeah.
Nobody's enforcing them
No.
unless you have to be a sole Israeli wrapped in a flag next to a hate march,
exactly.
and then you get hustled away by the cops very quickly.
Do you think, though, you would have heard, I'm sorry to interrupt, it's a good conversation, Kevin, but do you think what you heard from the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, the Commissioner for Manchester Police, who said, we're not going to let people say these things anymore, we're going to arrest them. It's late in the day, but that's a good thing, isn't it?
Better late than never. But actually, that's 2 constabularies out of whatever it is, 41, is it?
I've no idea the number. Someone will tell me before the show's over.
We've got Police Scotland, Northern Ireland Police, and 41 others.
Something like that.
So 2 out of 41 is not a particularly impressive ratio, even if they are big forces.
And look at Avon and Somerset, who've literally taken the complete opposite line.
Yeah, and I forget, Peter Carter is always quoting that bloke's proper name, and I can't remember what it is now. I've heard it so often, it should be extra in my memory, but alas, it isn't.
Pastor Robinson Foster.
Oh, right, okay. That's the one. Now,
Pascal,
quite honestly,
Pascal, yeah.
Pascal. So the thing is that if anybody shouted that against Islam,
yes,
plot would be run before the second verse had started.
Well, do you know, if you insert you insert many other things. I mean, Peter was saying if you inserted in some of the slogans like black people or whatever, you'd be arrested immediately and banged away, and rightly so. Kevin, listen, just for time reasons only, thank you for the conversation, but I do want to go to John in Kent as well. Hello, John.
Hello, Nick. Thanks for taking my call.
Pleasure.
And what I'd like to say was, or what I'm going to say now is, a Merry Christmas to you and Happy New Year to you and everybody else at Talk.
Oh, thank you. I won't tell the rest. I'll just hog that for myself.
Yeah, okay. All right, anyway, what I wanted to say was, what do you reckon would happen if I was to jump on a train tomorrow and go down to Avon and Somerset, jump up on the stage and sing Death, death to the Labour Party? What do you reckon might happen?
Well, if you believe the press release, because it's an institution, they probably wouldn't do anything. Yeah.
Oh, well, I might do that then.
Well, I wouldn't recommend it, because I don't think a decent bloke like you would do that, John. But you very flippantly but wisely kind of highlight what so many people are saying about. We've had lots of messages on a similar theme like that, and I've read some of them out, and rightly so, because people just see a different level of policing. We're calling it 2-tier policing, but actually I think it depends in which of those 41 police authorities that you live in. Depends on the type of policing and law enforcement you're getting. I love this idea. If we're not going to get the police chief, Sarah Crew, I think her name was, having been told, to resign,
I just found out.
right, to resign, then I love the idea of a private prosecution. I tell you what, if there's a GoFund for that from a bunch of lawyers, I'll put some money in to see how that goes. John, listen, thank you for your call. Happy Christmas to you, and thank you indeed for your huge response to this. I'm going to be covering with Monty Panesar very shortly, a cricketer, of course, as you will all know. These lads having a few too many drinks in Australia, apparently. And, of course, if there's time for your calls, I will pack them in. 0344 499 1000 with me, Nick de Bois, on Drive.
the Talk app. You can watch, catch up and listen to all your favourite shows and podcasts anytime, anywhere, all on the Talk app. Watching and listening to Talk just got easier. There's now only one place for the home of common sense. So head over to your App Store or Google Play and search Talk now.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Rob sent me a message saying, Nick, nice to see you back. Thank you, Rob. Just for one more day only, between 1 and 4 tomorrow. Give Starmer credit, he says. He has ensured that there will never be another Labour government, ever. There you go. There's a silver lining for you. Nicely spotted. Oh, we're getting in the Christmas spirit now, aren't we? Well, speaking of spirits, see what I did here? In the Ashes, England cricket players being investigated after a video shows Ben Duckett seeming to be drunk. So, England star Ben Duckett apparently slurred his words as he struggled to get back to his hotel room after a heavy night drinking during his side's Ashes, in quotes, stag do. Not sure it was actually a stag do. Now look, I'm very old-fashioned, I'm a boomer. And I'm not a cricketer. In fact, I know very little about cricketer, which is going to make it a little embarrassing talking to my brilliant next guest. But boys on tour does happen. But having said that, people pay a lot of money to go and watch them. And really, shouldn't they be performing better? Welcome, Monty Panesar, former England cricketer. And Monty, you were on a Ashes tour yourself, weren't you?
Yeah, thank you, Nick, for having me on your show. Yeah, I was actually. We won last time. Actually, we won back in 2010 and 11, and there's wonderful memories. It was a brilliant tour.
Yeah, well, it's they often seem a dim memory to some people. At the moment, not being great cricket. So, look, how do you feel about this? I'll just give you a clue to my views. I just think if you put a load of blokes together away for a long time, you're going to get a drinking session taking place, probably more than one or two. Probably they were a bit stupid being so public about it, as it sounds like. But we had Deputy Head of Sport in here telling me, yeah, but people pay good money, they expect to see them peak performance. Tell me, what do you make of it?
Well, I think what's happened is obviously England, lost the first 2 Test matches, and then it was already scheduled to go to Noosa, and it was a time to relax and time to just sort of, let their hair down a little bit. So as you do, you're not going to be in your rooms, playing Monopoly or Connect 4. You're going to be out in the bars, having a few beers, relaxing, letting your hair down a little bit, and also then talking about the game. It happens, very much in cricket. Guys get together, have a few beers, and then you just talk about what went when, what didn't go so well. And I'm sure, they had those discussions, but then obviously for Ben Duckett and a few of the other cricketers, it kind of looks like, they were kind of enjoying themselves a little bit more than they knew to. And it just puts a little bit, they've got to be accountable, obviously, for their own behaviours, but then puts a bit more pressure on them now. They've got to perform if they get selected in the next Test match. Because
it has put pressure on them, and we might, I hope there's not a big pile on about this. I hope they go out, have a very good game, and people just park it. But look, Ben Duckett, he obviously, if this is correct, was in quite a state. Does anyone go with these guys to keep an eye on them and, not let them... It sounds like he was literally wandering somewhere alone. Some fans saw him and videoed him, if this is all as reported. Shouldn't you have kind of gentle minders with you when you go on something like this?
Absolutely, that's a really good point, Nick, because even whenever I go out, I will always have 3 or 4 friends with me, and we always go back home together.
Yeah, but you're just going to Tesco's, aren't you? I mean,
yeah, I'm going to Tesco's, and then maybe, to the local and watching an Arsenal game and seeing them win, and obviously I'm disappointed that they're not on top of the league at the moment. but obviously, well, I was in Australia for the last 4 weeks anyway, and I was playing great cricket. And when we won on a Saturday, I enjoyed going out with the guys. But you're absolutely spot on there, because where is the security for these England players? I know they're enjoying themselves, and it's a good mental release, it's a good camaraderie, but where was they should have had security around them to protect the England players, so they get home back safely, and not someone like Ben Duckett was sort of unfortunately by himself there.
Yeah.
So it's a really good point, Nick.
Well, who knows? They might learn something from this. But I'm not trying to blame someone else for what they did, but it just strikes me that would be a sensible thing to do. I can let you into a secret. If a senior cabinet minister at a party conference is wandering around drinking a lot, one of his minders guides him safely out of the way and tries to pack him off the bed to go and be quiet. So if we can do it for politicians, we damn well should be able to look after our cricketers. But there's also another point here. How forgiving will England fans be? Because, they must be really disappointed with the result. It has not been great for English cricket. Is that people will pay a lot of money? That disappointment, does it ever show? Do you ever hear, like, fans are really, you've let the side down, you lot. This is really disgraceful behaviour. And here's what some of the fans say. Or are fans pretty generous to people on tour?
Yeah, look, while I was there over the last 4 weeks, I was speaking to some of the fans, the Barmy Army fans in Brisbane and in Adelaide. And, they were saying it cost them an average of, like, I think £5,000 a test match with the tickets, the food, the hotels and the travel. So, they were obviously quite disappointed because they had high hopes that England would do really well. And, when they hear obviously stories like this, they're going to be felt a little bit let down. They're going to think, look, we paid so much money. We've saved so much, of our savings coming out here. Yeah. And Australia's a great place. Even if England don't do well, you've got so many other different activities and enjoy, a wonderful country that it is. But I think for cricket fans that have gone there, especially the English ones, they want England to do really well. And, they would be hoping that this England team somehow can turn it around at Melbourne. But when they hear this kind of stuff at news, so what's happened, they're going to feel like, well, did the guys take it really seriously or not? So I know what the England...
But they do,
like,
don't they, Monty?
I've been there as well. You need to have a few beers.
They do, sorry to interrupt you, but they do take it seriously. It would be, you might get the odd one who kind of is maybe towards the end of his career is not so sure. But these guys, they've got pride for playing for England, haven't they?
Absolutely. They've got pride. They will work as hard as they can. They these are talented cricketers. The best we've seen. This bunch, and what they've done for English cricket is amazing. And if they've just had one little night out where they've had a few drinks, I'm sure even the English fans can forgive them if at Melbourne we see, let's say, Ben Duckett grind it out, show a bit of mental toughness and say, right, I'm accountable for my behaviour. I'm going to go out there, smash the bowlers around and show how good I am. Everyone's going to forget very quickly. So, that's what we want to see. We want to see England win at Melbourne. It will be, such a great relief for everyone just to have some success on this
will they?
Trip in Australia.
Are we going to get that win?
It's going to be difficult. The difficulty is, Nick, is 20 wickets. How are we going to get 20 wickets in a test match? That's going to be always the biggest question. And it's going to be up to the England bowlers. It's going to be up to Ben Stokes being tactically smart and, Brendan McCullum, trying to get the team to find their way and outdo the Australians and, be smarter than them, play smart cricket. So there's many things that they've got to do really well. But
Monty, you've just given something that went straight over my head, but I've got a man here who probably knows what you're talking about there. I've got Johnny Gould, who's up next here on Talk. I mean, did you understand a word that Monty said about how we're going to win the next match?
When Monty speaks, things happen. That's all I'll say about Monty. Merry Christmas to you, Monty. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you. I look forward to the Christmas present.
OK, I won't go there, but you won't get any alcohol, I can promise you that. Monty, listen, thanks very much indeed for joining us. I I'm a bit relaxed about sportsmen going out and getting drunk when they've been on tour for a while. I realise, however, fans will have paid a lot of money and it's not as clear-cut as perhaps an old-fashioned bloke like me says.
The problem is, Nick, they take these 20-something guys out for 2 months.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's a totally unnatural being.
Yeah.
Some of them are lads who are single. Some of them are missing their wives or girlfriends.
Or both.
In between games, it's the summer, what do you do? Yeah. That's the problem that England's footballers have had at these posh hotels, where they sit there and play video games a week from the next game. It's a totally unnatural concept, these long tours. And it was designed for an era where there was not air travel.
No, and
you'd come home in between games.
Well, it's true.
Crazy.
I'm being a little bit kind. So, Johnny, good to see you. What you got coming up?
See you, Nick. Well, I'll tell you what, the world has gone absolutely crazy in the last 3 or 4 hours. A massive terror attack foiled, and sentencing will happen early next year. If it's not life, I mean, goodness me, this is...
If you don't get life for that, what will you get?
So frightening, because God forbid that happens again in this country. God forbid something similar to Bataclan or Ariana Grande happens in this country, and the flood of people we're leaving will be exacerbated through fear, and also
Jewish
the fact
people are being singled out to be attacked in our country.
That's right. Mike Neville said on the show a couple of days ago, he said, we can't have any diversity that we believe in if one group is attacking another. And he's absolutely right.
They're very well put.
It's not just Jews who are going to leave the country. It'll be Sikhs and Hindus. It will be fair-minded people who live in so-called multicultural areas. They'll either flee to Gloucester and join Alex Phillips in the West Country, or move down to the Sussex
if you're in
coast.
Somerset and Avon, of course, where the chief of police there is not prosecuting Bob Villan, you've got different laws to the rest of the country by the sounds of things.
And that's another madness that we're going to talk about. Rupert Lowe will be joining us on the show.
Oh, well, he won't have much to say. He'll sit on the fence.
Luckily, we want a quiet start, don't we? And also, under the guise of peace talks, the war between Russia and Ukraine is intensifying. And we have to salute Ukraine for their indefatigability. They're fighting for survival. And I think Trump's properly being gamed here. It's like he doesn't really understand Putin. He thinks peace is the way. He thinks investing in that post-war American style where you impose your capitalism on a country that everything good can happen. Well, in a multipolar world that he wasn't brought up in, he was brought up in an America that ruled the world from 45 onwards. I think that world has slightly moved on.
And he's also he's also the president who said, of course, he will bring peace within peace to Ukraine in one day, and that America was not going to be in any more war.